Good evening. I'd like to call the June 5th, 2012 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please have a roll call?
Yes, Mayor Coombs.
Present.
Council members Bagley.
Here.
Finley. Here. Levison. Here. Samori.
Here.
Santos.
Here.
Witt. Here. Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
All right, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at the first public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their name on that list will have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing items this evening or at the final call, public invited to be heard, or on any item at the end of the meeting. Next, we will have the minutes of May 22nd, and I think we have a change.
Yes. Mayor Coombs, I placed a set of corrected minutes at your desk tonight. In the first draft of the minutes, we had Fred Gabriel and Richard Montague's names incorrectly recorded in the wrong columns on the oil and gas items, so we've moved those to the correct fourth column.
Okay. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote. All right, it passed 7-0. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions or submissions of documents?
Yes, Mayor Coombs, I have two items for you. First of all, we placed a letter on your desk tonight for item 8A, which there's a letter from Top Operating Company regarding the 45-day drilling hiatus. And also we placed a letter to your desk from Sue Connolly regarding 11A, which is the First and Main Transit and Revitalization Plan. The Top Operating letter was delivered to you via email last week.
Is there a report from the city manager?
Mayor, Council, Chris Huffer would like to provide a brief update regarding the Alleyscape project.
All right.
Chris?
Thank you very much, Mayor Coombs and members of council. Chris Huffer, Public Works and Natural Resources. Just a quick update on the alley project as it's going along. I've got a couple of slides I can show you here really quick. All right. As you may have read in the paper, if you've walked by recently, you know that we've been able to open up the 400 block parking lot as well as the alleyway adjacent to that. We're happy that we've gotten that far. And if you may remember, about 3 months ago, if you were standing down at the north end of that alley looking south, that's kind of what you saw was asphalt and buildings and overhead power lines. And today we can say that we've put in the pavement section, put in the drainage, we've installed all the infrastructure underground to bring all of the power lines down. And if you were standing on the south looking north, you can see kind of the same thing, asphalt and trash cans. And today it looks more like that. And so far we've been able to, like I said, put in the main pavement structure of the alley, as well as trash enclosures in the parking lots and the pull-offs. There's still some work to be done. We're waiting for the steel manufacturing to be completed to put doors on the trash enclosures, as well as put in the screen wall along the sides. We do have a pathway now from Kimbark to the breezeway, and then the breezeway itself, we've been working with adjacent property owners and businesses there. Instead of taking the entire breezeway out at one time and putting it all back in, we've been able to break that in half and keep their business, keep a pathway to their doors open during construction. So as we move on to the 500 block, we will be coming back and completing the 400 breezeway as well. And today they have been moving on to the 500 block. They've been setting up the construction fencing and started tear out of the alley itself, as well as the breezeway structure. So I just also wanted to let you know we are working to keep as much of the 500 block parking lot open as possible during construction. The map that we're looking at here to the right is north, so that'd be the 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue to the left, Main Street at the top, and Kimbark to the south. So this is, the colored area is approximately what's closed today. The north area of that parking lot is open, and we're maintaining approximately about half of those parking spots that are there currently. This will take us through the end of this week, in which case then we'll be moving to 6th Avenue, doing that work and maintaining that north side of the parking. When we get a little bit further along in the project, we'll be swapping the closure in the parking lot, keeping the south half open. We have a little bit less than half in that configuration there, but we are working with traffic engineer Bob Ball to look at placing diagonal parking in 6th Avenue itself and maintaining traffic flow in 6th Avenue. That is the end of this presentation, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. Chris, when do we anticipate the lines being underground?
LPC is working right now to switch over all of their services. They're almost halfway through the 400 block right now. We're working in conjunction also with CenturyLink and Comcast. We're looking at probably 6 weeks that we can get all of that stuff taken care of and switched over underground, and we'll start taking the poles out then.
Yeah, I drove by it the other day. It looks really nice on the 400 block. So, thank you. Nice work.
A quick question. Are they planning on putting any type of coating or sealant on the bricks, or just leaving them natural like that?
Mayor Coombs, that was one of the options that we had the contractors bid on. We've decided at this point in time not to seal them.
Okay.
The manufacturer said that you can, but no need to.
Yeah. Well, don't see any further questions, so thank you, Chris. Great job.
Thank you very much.
I hope they go faster on our block.
That is our intent.
Okay, next we have a proclamation designating the month of June 2012 as Bicycle Month in Longmont. So I'll read the proclamation now. I don't know if Eric's here. Proclamation designating June 2012 as Bicycle Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas residents of the city of Longmont enjoy a superb quality of life in a livable community, have healthy, active lifestyles, and seek a cleaner environment, affordable transportation, and healthy children, and whereas the City Council of Longmont encourage its residents to be active and healthy, as well as to use clean and diverse transportation choices to mutually and courteously share the city's roadways, and whereas Colorado Bike to Work Day on June 27th, 2012 provides an opportunity to encourage residents, workers, and visitors of Longmont to bicycle for health, the environment, transportation, and recreation. The month of June is Colorado Bike Month, and June 16th is the annual Goodnight Ride, Longmont's community-wide celebration of cycling, and whereas the city of Longmont recently was recognized by the League of American Bicyclists for the first time as a Silver level bicycle-friendly community because of infrastructure, upgrades to on-street and off-street facilities, an award-winning bike map, education programs such as safe routes to school, and improved network connectivity. Therefore, I, Dennis L. Coombs, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim June 2012 as Bicycle Month in Longmont. And I invite all citizens in the community to commit to Longmont being a bicycle-friendly community by supporting Colorado Bike Month and Bike to Work Day. And I encourage all residents to enjoy the many benefits of bicycling throughout the year and to recognize the City of Longmont as Bike Month during June 2012. Thank you. I would also like to add that I think Strider Benston should be an award winner of this because he does more for riding bikes in this town than anybody.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Eric, say a few words.
Thank you. It's Ryan.
Excuse me, Ryan.
That's okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
I am Norwegian, so Eric does work. My name is Ryan Craigard. I'm president of Bicycle Longmont, and I want to thank you, City Council, for doing this proclamation. We are very excited for Colorado Bike Month. We have a lot of great things in store for the month. We have the Goodnight Ride coming up on June 16th, which is our largest fundraiser for Bicycle Longmont, and actually we were late this evening, and so I want to apologize for that. We were having our board meeting discussing the Goodnight Ride, actually. So, in addition to the Goodnight Ride, we also have the Bike to Work Day coming up on June 27th, and we have a lot of great things going on with that. We'll be doing a number of different breakfast stations across the city of Longmont, as well as our Bike to After Work program as well, which is an excellent, fun cruise from one pub to the next as we kind of celebrate the end of Bike Month, and it's kind of our grand finale as well. So with that, I also want to thank our board members who are here, Scott Conlon, as well as Brian Gansel over here as well. So, and Lauren Greenfield is here as well, and Chris Koyman. So with that, thank you all very much for this great proclamation.
Great.
I wrote him a note. I told him he could.
No.
Is this the new RTD plan?
Mayor Coombs, your next item is Retail Opportunities presentation by the Retail Recruitment Consultant, Katie Press. And I think Brad Powers has some opening remarks.
All right, go ahead. Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council. I think I left my unicycle in my office, so I wasn't able to make as grand an entrance as my colleague and neighbor in the DSC, Phil Greenwald. So I appreciated his entrance. That's memorable. I just wanted to introduce this item very quickly. You'll recall that earlier this year, the city retained KP Consulting to serve as the retail recruitment consultant for the city of Longmont. And Katie Press is here to provide the community with an update on the initial stages of the process that's been completed in terms of some of the things that she's been assessing relative to retail market conditions and opportunities in Longmont. You'll recall that when we outlined this work to you earlier in the year, we said that this would be a two-stage process. Katie reported to you, and you had some individual conversations earlier this spring with Katie about some of the issues related to retail opportunities in the community. This tonight is her opportunity to talk to the community about what's happening in Longmont in terms of our retail conditions now, and across various sectors of retail development, what some of the opportunities may be in the future. The second phase of the project is actually underway at this moment, which is for Katie to spend the time on an individual basis and reporting back to us on specific outreach efforts with specific retailers to judge their assessment of Longmont as an opportunity for future development and expansion into this part of the market. So in a minute, I will introduce Katie Press, and she will spend about 15-20 minutes with you, bringing you up to speed on that first part of the project, and she would also obviously welcome any questions you have. But while I have the podium, I did want to remind the community of a meeting that's coming up tomorrow evening that's associated with this topic, which is Newmark Merrill Companies is going to be presenting their preliminary concept plan for the redevelopment of Twin Peaks Mall, and that's going to be taking place at 5:30 tomorrow evening at the former J.C. Penney site on the mall property. So with that, I will be pleased to introduce Katie Press of KP Consulting, and she'll take it over from here.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Here. Yeah. Do you want me to? Okay. I'm just going to start quickly with a broad overall perspective, and then I'll talk about each of the different genres of retail. Overall, Longmont enjoys a broad and healthy retail environment in most categories of retail. With a market size of nearly 100,000 people, Longmont has been able to provide a stable environment for retail. During the analysis period that I worked on this, I had opportunity to visit with a number of existing retailers that are within the community, and without exception, they all expressed a pleasure of being able to be here in Longmont, that they do well, and I did not hear any negative feedback from any of the existing retailers that are here in town. The marketplace, breaks itself out into very specific categories of retail. And so when we really look at each of the individual categories, for the most part, these statements really ring true. Overall, neighborhood retail is very well represented, and neighborhood retail is categorized as that retail that's generally falls into the grocery category. And mid-range retail is very well represented. Mid-range really falls into what we call the junior box or mid-range retail category, and you guys, Longmont has an extensive amount of retail in that category. So overall, the market is perceived by the retail community as being very healthy and as being very deep in some respects. If we break it down, we move a little bit further into some of the specific genres. I'm sorry, I'm kind of stumbling around tonight. I don't seem to have my groove on yet. I apologize. I get better as I warm up. Let's talk about neighborhood retail. Neighborhood retail, again, is very well represented in the city of Longmont. You have multiple grocery opportunities for shopping. You have big box, or we have mass merchandise type of grocery opportunity. We have conventional opportunity, and you have some alternative in a very small capacity in the sense of Vitamin Cottage. Sprouts is poised to enter the market later this year. That was originally going to be a Sunflower. I think everybody's aware that merger consummated last week between Sprouts and Sunflower, and Sprouts will be the retailer moving forward, and they're excited to enter this market. They feel like there's a lot of opportunity in this market, and so they kind of present not a conventional retail opportunity in the sense of grocery. They have the opportunity to bring somewhat of an alternative perspective of groceries to this market, and something I think that is missing. if you really look at true alternative grocery options, I think Longmont's market is of the size and demographic profile to attract that type of retailer. I think really what has been a lack of opportunity for them has been one of the hurdles, as well as that particular genre of grocery has had very slow growth plans in the last 5 years. And so those have been two of the majority factors that have kept that retailer from particularly entering the market. I think that they are, again, focused on Longmont and are looking to try and bring what we call that true alternative grocer to Longmont. So overall, I mean, we don't really see what I would say any gaps in this genre of retail for the city. There you have what I would call, a good number of grocery store opportunities, and they're well placed around the community as such as that most people have an opportunity to find convenient shopping for grocery. Mid-range retail. Let's talk a little bit about what mid-range retail is. Mid-range retail is really those guys that we call junior boxes. These are guys who are not defined necessarily by size. They can range anywhere from 15,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet in size. Really what makes them a mid-range retailer is the type of retailing that they do. These are really specialty retailers, and they tend to specialize in goods within a specific range. These are where your hardware guys show up, the books, electronics. We also have soft good retailers that fall into this category. Those are going to generally be what we call the value retailers in that. That's somebody like Ross Dress for Less, somebody along the lines of TJ Maxx, Old Navy. And so, Longmont has been able to attract the majority of mid-range retailers that are currently active. If we look at the retailers that fit into this category that are active in the state of Colorado, and that's really our best example of the health of the market is looking at the retailers that operate within the state. And Longmont has been able to attract and maintain the majority of the retailers that fit into that category. There are a few missing retailers, and we've identified who those are, and we do think that there's still opportunity for those quote-unquote missing retailers within this genre to enter the market. And one of the great things about the Twin Peaks redevelopment project is that it allows the community to have a new project to advertise the community once again to these missing retailers, and it gives them a new opportunity to reevaluate this market and come back to it and say maybe it's time for us to go ahead and place a store in this marketplace. Some of the things that we see that potentially still are missing are pretty broad in category. Some of them are soft goods retailers. Some of them are more the decorator type of stores. And so I think that the market is substantial enough that they will be willing to sit down and take a look at this market again. Super regional retail, this is where we see really the most amount of change in terms of what's happened in Longmont. This is the category of retail where the recession has been most notable, especially for the city of Longmont. Retraction in the marketplace and the department store anchors have left a numerous amount of small market malls in decline. And anchor and non-anchor retailers who operate from a super regional perspective no longer really look at small markets as viable marketplace opportunities. And what's really happened when we look at this genre of retail is that there was a time when we had guys like Mervyn's and we had Montgomery Ward's and we had Sears, and we can all talk about whether they're still or not still a viable mall anchor, but as we're starting to see, they're becoming less and less of a mall anchor. As we've seen those department stores retract and go away in the marketplace, it's left big gaping holes in some mall opportunities, especially in the small mall opportunities. There's nobody to come back in and fill those gaps. We don't have growth in that particular section of retail. And without those retail anchors to come back and create the vibrancy that small market malls in particular really need, we have no way to regenerate this level of retail. One of the things that has been a fallout from the recession when we look at regional mall or super regional retail, and that's really what we're talking about in this category, is we've seen that this retraction has provided for the existing malls that are in place, especially within the metropolitan area, to take their trade areas and radiate them out into size ranges that exceed maybe what they had originally looked at. It's not uncommon now for regional malls to really look at 20-mile trade areas. And when we start to draw a ring around Flatirons and Broomfield, we really start to see how we are swept into that ring. And so retailers are not looking at Longmont as an opportunity that they need to get back into in terms of regenerating super regional retail. Really what they're saying is that they feel that opportunities that already exist are adequate in both location and in scale to serve this marketplace. So what we really see is that it's going to be highly unlikely that super regional retail is going to be reinitiated as part of the redevelopment of the mall. What I think we're really going to be looking at is an expectation of retailers who are going to fit more into that mid-range category, or perhaps are not going to necessarily be pure retail in terms of terminology. They may fit into the entertainment category, or they may fit into some sort of a hybrid category, but they're not going to be the traditional mall tenants that we associate consistent with Flatirons or with Cherry Creek or with Park Meadows on the southern end of the metropolitan area. There are retailers who do fit into this category that are not part of a mall type of development. Those would be our club stores, and really there's only two retailers who fit into that category. That's going to be Sam's Club, and that's going to be Costco. Costco is not interested in this market. They have very well placed their stores within the metropolitan area, and just on looking at different opportunities outside it, unfortunately, locations that they have in proximity to Longmont make Longmont not an opportunity for them. But what we do see, we know that Sam's Club has had interest in this market. They've gone so far as to own a piece of real estate in the city that they looked at as an opportunity. I believe that they, as a retailer, are going to continue to want to evaluate this market and look at it as an opportunity to enter. So I do see, one retailer in the super regional retail category who does see Longmont as a market opportunity, and that's most likely going to be Sam's Club. Sorry, we'll move on a little bit as I continue to fumble tonight. I apologize. Downtown retail. I did take a look at downtown retail, and I wanted to go ahead and spend just a couple minutes in talking about that. This is the issues that associate with downtown retail are not consistent with the other genres of retail. It really is, in its own respect, its own type of retailing opportunity. There are a number of limitations to attracting national retailers to downtown opportunities, and that in and of itself makes downtown a difficult type of retail to work with from a national basis. National retailers look for very specific types of opportunities. Generally, they're related to, enough parking, enough visibility, and enough signage. And these are all three aspects that can be rather challenging in a downtown opportunity. And so in today's environment where we really see retailers are fairly risk aversive, downtown opportunities present, unfortunately for them, a higher level of risk, and such to the point that they tend to shy away from these type of opportunities. So what that means is that we end up looking at independent type of retailers. These are really what I call the soul of a downtown, and reliance on independent retailers are really going to be the way that a downtown grows from a retail perspective. And so the challenge with that is independent retailers are not easily identifiable. There's no directory of independent retailers. There's not some checklist that we can pick up and call. These are sometimes business owners that are still conceptualizing a business and are visible to us as a community to identify to be able to be part of a downtown. So it takes kind of a reverse approach when we look at downtowns. We really start to have to look at downtowns and creating an environment that these independent retailers look at and assess for what it is today and determine whether or not this is an opportunity that they feel fits their retail opportunity. So that's not common in general retail. In general retail, we build to a specific nature in terms of the retail. In downtown, we kind of have to create the environment and then hope that these independent retailers want to become part of it. And one of the really key factors of creating that environment is the ability to create a vibrant downtown. So it requires, in my opinion, taking a look at a downtown from a holistic perspective, or looking at it from a larger perspective, and creating a viewpoint of a downtown as a single entity in terms of how it's programmed, the activities that are going on with it, how it looks, how it functions, and that if all those factors are starting to work together, it should have the right environment for these type of independent retailers to enter into the market. It's really counter in terms of how we look at conventional retail, and it's the only aspect of retail that you really take that perspective with. So that's kind of really a very brief overview, and pretty generic in a lot of ways, but I'm actually happy to answer any questions for you guys, or be able to talk about it a little more in depth, and hopefully a little more succinctly than I have so far sometimes.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie, thank you so much for providing this information for us. And we've been looking at this and talking about this for a while, and I think most of us understand that we're not going to get a Cabela's, we're not going to get a something very large coming here to Longmont, but it is an opportunity for unique businesses, and we really want to help unique businesses start and grow here in Longmont, and let other places know about our unique special shops here in Longmont. So it's a challenge and an opportunity, but I think that that's our uniqueness is what's going to bring folks here to visit Longmont. So thank you again for helping us clarify our strengths and weaknesses in that area.
Thank you.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. Kitty, the other thing that we've heard over and over again, and I know the minute Trader Joe's announced they were going to be in Boulder, I got, I don't know, maybe 5 emails, 2 phone calls, why didn't we get Trader Joe's? Can you explain a little bit, for the benefit of everybody out there in TV land and in the audience listening in, what some of the dynamics are when a specific type of retailer is looking to locate somebody like a Trader Joe's? I mean, what would Longmont have to be at the moment to be something? I mean, I guess we don't want to, actually, I don't want to give you that answer. We don't have to be Boulder. We're not Boulder. But, what are some of those formatting of the community signals people with that kind of offbeat retail environment like Trader Joe's has look for? And then what's their trade area?
Every retailer is different. One of the really unique aspects about retail is that even retailers within the same genre, if we took Einstein's and we took Starbucks, just as rough examples, you would find that each has a unique set of criteria about how they evaluate a marketplace and how they decide how they're going to enter. It makes it difficult when you're a community and you're trying to assess how to bring retail in, because, there's not necessarily a set checklist that says, okay, well, these things will bring me a bookstore. And so in the case of Trader Joe's, there's been, I think, the whole state has been looking for them to come in. As many emails as you've gotten, they've gotten thousands saying, when are you coming to Colorado? When can you be part of Colorado? And I think sometimes Colorado ends up as a midpoint. A lot of retailing concepts are more comfortable where densities are higher, population densities are higher. The West Coast provides those opportunities. The East Coast provides those opportunities. We have seen some retailers, In-N-Out is a really good example, jumped over us and went to Texas, because they felt that the population densities were such in the state of Texas that it was a more growth opportunity than perhaps. We kind of sit sometimes in the middle, and we're not necessarily have a population base that is high enough that garners the attention that we wish it would for some of these signature retailers. But that said, Trader Joe's finally looked enough at our market and said, okay, we think we can enter it. I think that they seem to be fairly cautious about entering our market. I'm not sure they fully understand what we're capable of as a consumer base, and I think that they're testing the waters, which means that they're going to pick what they perceive as home run sites. So they're going to be looking at communities that are sufficiently dense, and seem to fit their target customer base the best. And I think they will open those stores and really test our ability to support them. If we as consumers really support them and really they see good success out of their test stores, I think then we will see them move on a broader base in Colorado. Right now they've announced 2 stores publicly, one in the core of Denver and one in Boulder. And that seems to be kind of their bullseye or target or home run opportunities that they're trying to assess whether or not we're going to be a consumer base that really supports them as a concept. If we do, then I think that we could see opportunity for them to move outside of those boundaries and really take a closer look at Colorado and saying where are our expansion opportunities. Would Longmont be a possibility? I would tell you that if the Boulder store is a raging success, given our population basis and the demographic in here, we're not that dissimilar from what we see in Boulder in some respects. And I mean, we have all the positive aspects. So I would see them actually being attracted potentially to this market in time. The retailers are not moving at breakneck speed anymore. They're very cautious and very deliberate in their movements. And so there's no sense of urgency as there once was. When we saw prior to the recession, we saw retailers move with post-haste to make decisions. And we were the beneficiary of that in some respects, in the sense that we garnered a lot of retail interest in a short period of time during those boom years. That's not the case in today's environment. They're much more deliberate in how they make their decisions, and I think Trader Joe's is an excellent example of how a retailer is going to be deliberate in terms of entering this marketplace. So I don't think it's an impossibility for Longmont in the long run. I would tell you in the short run, though, they're going to have to get their stores open, and we all need to go shop in Boulder and make them feel really good that that was a raging success. And I know that's kind of counter to the community, but and then when they feel that they're like, wow, we've just hit it out of the park, Boulder's been a great opportunity for us, we can start looking at surrounding communities. Longmont would be poised to have Trader Joe's take a look at it.
And so it's not bad to give you your zip code at the checkout line?
No, it's not.
And that's probably how the Sprouts and Sunflower looked at our demographic here in Longmont and saw how many people were going there and thought it was a good time to come. Can you also explain a little bit more about some other, I was going to say serendipitous trends in the market? I mean, when the beginning of the recession happened, we saw contractions in retail in very, very successful locations like Linens and Things. Linens and Things was in Belmar, and it was a successful location, just as the Borders here in Longmont was one of the top grossing. So can you give us a little bit about a little information around sometimes these periodic swings in the market, and is it in the case of Belmar, I don't think anybody pointed a finger. It was the fault of the city or the fault of Belmar itself that Linens and Things pulled out. It was just some other thing that they had to make a decision. So can you explain to us why they would close, retailers would think of closing successful stores?
Well, 2008, the fall of 2008, I mean, those of us in the retail industry, that marked a very specific time in the change of our industry. The recession, we as consumers changed. In that moment in time, we all changed. And because we all changed, retail changed. We stopped spending in the same way that we had been spending going into the recession, which began in the fall of 2008. The outfall of that is that there wasn't enough consumer spending to support all of the retail concepts that had been trying to survive when things were good. And really what was interesting is that we used to call them the bookends. In mid-range retail, that's where we really saw the bookends. You had Borders and you had Barnes & Noble. You had Linens and Things and you had Bed Bath & Beyond. And there were a lot of factors that played into the failure of some of these retailers. It's not all that we all stopped shopping at one and only went to the other. There were a lot of factors in terms of the economic makeups of these corporations that made them not candidates to be able to survive a crash in the business. Until I would tell you that retail is going to continue to feel undefined in that respect in terms of, we see little blips in retail where we see retailers who get hot and then they're not hot again, and we see aspects of retail that get hot and then all of a sudden they're not hot, or some have stayed more aggressive than others, because we as consumers are not consistent. Every time we kind of loosen up our wallets and feel a little bit better about things, then we get hit with a new jobs report. And everybody gets a little concerned, like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to be one of those guys who is a new claim for unemployment, and I'm not going to go spend money on doing certain things. And each of us individually picks where we spend and where we don't spend. We're not kind of freewheeling like we once were as consumers, and retailers feel the impact of that. And so until we become a more consistent factor for retailers, it's going to be really difficult, I think, for retailing to fully understand what things look like going forward long term. And we do have retail who is trying to reemerge and trying to, long-term retailers who are trying to reemerge and be more aggressive again and come back to marketplace and grow again. But when you sit and really visit with them, the criteria under which they're making decisions and the length of time they're taking to make decisions is dramatically longer and much more risk-aversive than it's ever been in the past history. And this recession was far more reaching to retail than any other time in anybody's memory or history that deals with it in today's environment. To answer, to kind of expand on that question, there are things that are impacting retail. There are other trends besides just the recession that are impacting retail, and I'll talk to you a minute about that, because it's kind of intriguing. If you're in the industry, there's a lot of articles being written all the time, and it's kind of funny that, we're seeing stuff come out on a monthly basis talking about, to this very point, retailers trying to understand consumers better, and they're all getting new names, and they're talking about how, it's funny to hear how they talk about us. How's that? Consumers. One of the things that's really impacted retailers is, e-commerce is starting to actually make its impact. I think for a long time, bricks and mortar retailers were not really thinking that the impact from that was that great. Well, as we start to see generations younger than me in particular, are much more comfortable in shopping online, we're starting to see that become much more impactful. So, I don't think we're in a place anywhere where we can dismiss e-commerce. I mean, it does have an impact on retail. It's going to continue to have a growing impact on retail. And where that tapers off or where it doesn't, that's going to be something I don't think anybody has a really good handle on. Precision shopping. This is kind of a new thing. This is where we as consumers don't always want to go and mill around the mall. We might actually go looking for something in specificity. We want to go in, get it, and come out. And that's a fairly new perspective from shoppers. So we're seeing people become more of a precision shopper. We're starting to see a trend where this is happening a lot in electronics. People research it online. They like to go to the actual store, touch it, feel it, play with it, and then they go back and they buy it online. So that's another trend that is starting to come up. And so it's actually putting activity in the malls, or it's putting activity in some shopping centers, but we're not actually seeing the actual productivity of it from a sales perspective, because we as consumers may not actually be making that purchases there. We're maybe going back home and buying, especially when, you can buy things online that don't have sales tax. So, these are all things that we start to see in terms of the evolution of us as consumers that impact the bricks and mortars retailers. And we don't think about them when we're doing them ourselves, but when we start thinking about a lot of people doing some of these changes in shopping patterns, they have long-lasting impacts to the retail. And when we really start to look at, a lot of these type of trends are very specific to that super regional retail. So, I touched lightly on what happens to small market malls and what's happening to malls in general. And as you guys know, you've gotten some more in-depth perspective from me on that. But all these factors actually really impact all of that level of retail. I mean, we really can't do that with groceries. I mean, you're not going to go research apples online and then go in and touch them, peel them, and go home and buy apples online. But there are certain aspects of retail where we as consumers have made some dramatic changes.
So I kind of, it sounds like we need to be open to what retailers want to come to Longmont, and also realize that we have kind of a specific place of the market, that we're not going to be a super regional mall.
Correct.
And yet there's still a market for different types of retail in our community, and they'll recognize what our market share is, and kind of that piggyback off of what's already here that attracts people.
Very much so. In today's environment, one of the really changing dynamics in retail is that a lot of retailers have changed the size of their trade areas that they choose to try and serve. And that's a really important factor in the sense of looking at this. And that's a fluid number for retailers. I mean, retailers can look at smaller markets, in better times, they might look at smaller markets and say, we can go there and do well. In today's environment where everybody is much more risk averse, they're saying, to be safe in our real estate choices, we're going to demand higher population numbers in order to support our stores. I think what's really important to understand is that if we were doing projects today in today's standards, 100,000 people would start to be a minimum threshold for some of the retail to start to even look at this market. The fact that Longmont was able to be strong enough and was attractive enough to attract all of those retailers in a different time period and then retain them on a healthy basis is very positive. And so there are certain aspects of retail that look at this market as being attractive. Longmont is not by any stretch of the imagination the only smaller community in the entire United States that is wrestling with a closed mall. I mean, when you look at websites like closedmall.com, there are lists and lists and lists of small market malls who are experiencing the same issues associated with loss of anchors, changing in shopping patterns, changing of trade area dynamics for super regional retail. So I don't see that as a negative towards retail. I just see that as being an indicative change of what's happening in that particular genre of retail. What I see really is that the community, the retail that you do have, and you have a great amount of it, is very healthy. And what's missing is very minimal. And I do think that we have opportunity to reposition this community in those missing retailers. So, and Brad asked me to kind of talk a little bit about next steps. I mean, next steps definitely is us reaching out to those retailers that we think are still very good candidates for Longmont and getting face-to-face with them and touching them personally and finding out how we can reposition this market in their eyes as an opportunity for them to enter the market.
Thank you, Katie. I don't see any other questions. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you. The first person on the list for public invited to be heard is Paul Tiger. Could you please come down and state your name and address? It's been...
Paul Tiger, 452 Dixon. Good evening. I spent some time this morning with Dale, and I'm going to catch him up on some of the things that I discovered since I left his office, and I'll catch you up on them as well. I have never been seeking blame for what's been going on at my park, but there's been so much deflection of responsibility that it just seemed to be like people were dancing around saying, it's not me, it's them, it's not me. Have you checked with them? So what I found out today after I left Dale's office, discussing how the trees have been cut down, and it's really amazing. Dale has this photograph on Google where you can see the giant stump of the tree that got left there for a season before it was ground. And wanting to look at where the trees went that were surrounding the bridge and so on. What I found out is that, in fact, they were cut by a city contractor. I've talked with our city manager about what's going on with the contractors, and perhaps they're doing things without, oh yes, well, we're going to be working on that bridge, or we're going to be working on that structure, so go down there and clear the area. Turns out that they're actually not going to be working on that bridge. They're going to be working on a different bridge, but the trees got cut down anyway. and they were on the school side of the creek of the irrigation canal. And lo and behold, it turns out that Mark Thomas, who lives exactly less than a block from me, is the grounds maintenance person for the St. Vrain Valley School District. And independent of what I've been doing, he actually went today trying to figure out who was cutting down the trees on the St. Vrain School property adjacent to the canal. Turns out it was a city contractor. Turns out it was for work to be performed that we don't actually know what that work is. I'm not seeking blame. What I'm seeking is someone who's going to take on the responsibility of replacing the trees. The park is being desertified. The shade trees, which take a very, very long time to mature, have been cut down. And I would like either the city or the school district. Doesn't look like the school district has a responsibility here. Looks like it's my city park. And I'm asking for, when will we see those trees replaced? All along 3rd Avenue and Martin, we see trees constantly being planted. My wife is calling me on the phone and says, look, they're planting more trees on Martin. Where are our trees? Please, maintain the parks that we have.
Thank you, Paul. Stacy Balcom, followed by Travis Whipple.
Hi, Council, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me here today. I would like to just say...
What's your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Stacy Balcom. It's pronounced Balcom, B-A-L-C-O-M. 1854 Centaur Circle, Lafayette, Colorado, 80026.
Thank you.
As you know, I produce special events. And again, I am happy that you have designated Union Res as a location to do festivals, music and arts events at least. And I'm willing to do something all 3 times that you have designated as something to do with it, because corporations benefit from that kind of exposure. And they look for that kind of contract where they can have a multiple-year contract for multiple events at multiple locations. That's what it helps maximize the exposure of their business that way. And since no one else has stepped forward to do anything with Union Res, I would like to do that. However, I did last time give you a notice of claim just because this was my concept back in 1995. And I'm just concerned that this was theft of my intellectual property and coming through the back door by buying water rights. And I just know that the farmer told me no. And he said he would never give up this property. And then he was upset that Heaven Fest came in to do it. And you guys overruled his objection. And so I also have issues with Boulder and Denver in sabotaging my licenses and cutting off my cash flow and social life and ripping off my mailing list, ripping off my business plan. So it's been a nightmare for me to try to establish events. But Union Res is my idyllic place in Colorado to do something, and I would love to take it and, you know, take the reins and go. But the thing that's holding me back is that I just circulated a newsletter, or not a newsletter, it's basically a questionnaire. It lists all of the events that I've been working on for the last 25 years in Colorado and coast to coast. And I didn't have any problem dishing this out to all the vendors at the Cinco de Mayo. But Boulder Creek Festival has an unconstitutional permanent restraining order against me, so I wasn't able to contact the artists there. And the irony is that I started the art fair, and that's the thanks I got for getting it established, because I've been retaliated against as a whistleblower, given that the duck race is illegal. But that aside, I just came from the People's Fair this past weekend, and they threw me out because a food vendor was irate and would not accept the fact that this is my business, and she's been doing the Mile High Festival, which I also own. And I've never been allowed to use soccer fields to do festivals in. So for my business to manifest as the Mile High Festival in Commerce City, when I've tried to do it at Mile High Stadium and Arapahoe Park Racetrack. You know, I mean, I'm having a frustrating time.
Thank you.
to-
Your 3 minutes is up. I appreciate
Okay.
you being here.
Okay. I'm going to leave this with you.
Okay, leave it with City Clerk, please. Next, Travis Whipple, followed by Penny Nickel. Yeah, I know, but it says.
Hi, Travis Whipple, 1368 Clemson Drive here in Longmont. And what I want to talk to you today is, it's kind of annoying that I'm here talking about it because about just over a year ago, my group, I'm the chairman of the Longmont 912 Tea Party, my group was told that this city council, that the city of Longmont was not considering smart meters. But I've just found out from a friend, and she's provided me the information off of our own city website, that we are looking at two-way radio communication meters, aka smart meters. We're just hiding it under a different name. I don't know. I'm going to put on a tin hat here for a minute. I don't know how many of you, hopefully all of you, are aware of an organization called ICLEI and a movement from the United Nations by the title of Agenda 21. This agenda came out after the 1992 Kyoto Treaties, when the United States failed to sign the environmental policies proposed by the UN at that meeting. They created Agenda 21 and an organization called ICLEI to usurp the federal government and come directly to local municipalities, to counties, to cities like Longmont, like Boulder County. If you look at Boulder County's environmental policies, you'll see a lot of this under the heading of sustainability. I'm quite annoyed that our city has a sustainability office. Sustainability is a key word. Words have meaning. Words have strength. Sustainability is part of Agenda 21. By having a sustainability office, we are participating in Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is looking to take our sovereignty. I realize that sounds very conspiratorial, but I'm not the only one out there talking about it. There have been cities and counties across this country that have declared themselves UN-free zones because of the damage that ICLEI and Agenda 21 have done to their communities. I've got friends who live here in Longmont. They're roofers, and they will not do roofing in Boulder County because of the sustainability initiatives that Boulder County has set up. It is too expensive for them to do business. It is too environmentally regulated. It is killing their business. They like living here. They live here, but they do their work outside of our county. I want you to reevaluate this smart meter program, and I want you to get rid of it. I don't want to see taxpayer money spent on investigating it. I don't like trial programs, especially government grant programs, because it's still coming out of my taxpayer money, whether it comes from a federal grant program or a tax initiative or a special taxing zone. So I'd really like you to drop the smart meter program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Penny Nickel, followed by Strider Benston.
My name is Penny Nickel. I live at 1072 Button Rock here in Longmont. Methylphenidate causes headaches, stomach pain, loss of appetite, trouble sleeping, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, lightheadedness, irritability, nervousness, blurred vision, dry mouth, constipation, and psychosis. Sertraline, dizziness, drowsiness, dry mouth, loss of appetite, increased sweating, diarrhea, upset stomach, trouble sleeping, salt imbalance. Atorvastatin, here's another chemical that causes diarrhea, upset stomach, muscle and joint pain, muscle deterioration, liver damage, and changes in blood tests, suspected of causing Alzheimer's disease. You might think that I am speaking of chemicals found in fracking fluid, but I'm not. I'm talking about chemicals found very commonly in your medicine chests. I'm also talking about chemicals that are taken every single day, some by our children, right here in Longmont. We think nothing about what we're doing to ourselves and to our kids. You might know these chemicals better by the names of Ritalin, Zoloft, and Lipitor. If we're so concerned about the fluids that are put a mile under the surface of this earth, far past the water sources, why is there not a huge outcry as to why we willingly shove these down our kids' throats for a condition that was unheard of 40 years ago and could be controlled many times with diet changes? Why do we willingly take a chemical for years to control cholesterol when we could just change our diets and exercise a little? What is also concerning is that this stuff is going into our water supplies, into our sewer system, and recycled into the suspecting form of tap water. Do I think that we should allow our contamination from oil and gas to go unchecked? Absolutely not. Councilman Bagley, I appreciate your passion for it, and I'm pretty much on board with you, except for the lawsuit issue. Oil and gas must be a good neighbor to keep them welcome in our community. But why pick on an industry that brings us the very energy that we must have to stay warm in the winter, fuel our cars so that we can get to work, support our families, provide tax money to improve education in our communities and jobs? If you Google municipal water supplies contaminated with prescription drugs, you'll find study after study that this is a real problem. Perhaps not in Longmont, but certainly in other communities. I think that the outrage is a bit misplaced. In the meantime, you better be filtering your water. Thank you.
Strider Benson.
Oh boy, there are always so many things. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. Thank you for acknowledging my bike, Tara, who is out there. I think it's good to talk about democracy. Let me, couple of particulars. Florida has just recently put out a hit list of 182,000 people to suppress from the vote. One of them being a 91-year-old black man who was a decorated veteran of the Battle of the Bulge, born in Brooklyn, but they're trying to take his right to vote away because he might have a name something like somebody else's, like they did in 2000. 182,000 people to be suppressed. Texas, the word just came out, 1.5 million people on a suppressed list. There has been in this country in the last 10 years fewer than one person per million who has actually been chargeable with what they call voter fraud. But there have been many hundreds of thousands or millions who have been suppressed from voting by these purges. The basic idea is to exterminate democracy in this country, and we see the battle flag in Wisconsin. Will plutocracy and citizens united be able to destroy the people's governments in this country? We're seeing today whether we will survive or not. Montana, who was taken over by the copper barons, passed a law, Fair Campaign Practices Act, just like we had here in Longmont, 1912, that said corporations cannot pour money to buy governments. And they have had that law successfully for 100 years. The United States Supreme Court just enjoined the state of Montana, saying that we're going to look at this and we might declare your home rule unconstitutional. That there is no home rule, no democracy left in this country except for those who have the power to buy it, like Alec. Wisconsin today, Governor Scott Walker, 8 times more money than his challenger. Of that 8 times, the score is 22-1 for outside the state money coming in to corrupt and dictate what the people of Wisconsin can vote for and what kind of government they have. Let's get serious, and let's hang on to whatever trace of home rule we have left here in Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess before we start the next session? Is that all right, everybody? All right. everybody come back to their order, please? I'll see his. There he is.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is 8A, ordinance 2012-36, public hearing and second reading of a bill for an ordinance amending ordinance O 2012-06 imposing and O 2012-18 extending the moratorium on accepting or processing land use applications, permit applications, or other applications seeking approval to conduct oil and gas extraction or related operations within the city limits. I believe both Brian Schumacher and Eugene May are here to answer questions.
All right. Are there any questions from council members before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. So the first person is Paul Tiger.
Greetings. As I said the last time that I addressed this group on this same topic, was that I thought that
Can you say your name and address again, please, just for the record?
Paul Tiger, 452 Dixon. That I thought that this was, I actually went back and looked at the preamble, and I really find it all that bad. I mean, the preamble to the Constitution, the preamble to the Declaration of Independence is more telling. But I was hoping that you'd approve it, and then we'd get sued. But of course, really, what I wanted for us to do was to join with all of the other cities and towns who have the same issue, and bring our action to the state rather than have the state bring the action to us. I've read the petition or the proposed initiative to change the charter, and I'm actually speaking to the people behind me in that it's too wordy, kids. One sentence. The first sentence, 16.1. There you go. Throw all the other stuff out, the whys and the wherefores. Okay, this is the charter. I feel that should that move forward, it'll pass. And you guys, whatever it is you're doing here right now, kind of pointless. But it would be nice to know that the city representatives represent the citizens. My editorial from last Thursday said, rather than constantly looking for science, pointing to science, when someone says to me, scientifically proved, I already know that the rest that comes is BS, because all we can do is disprove things with science, not prove things. So it's whose science? Yours, mine, theirs. It's about emotion. They fear, some folks fear losing their income, and other people fear losing their lives and being poisoned and setting their water on fire. I leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Gabriel, followed by Walt Engelhardt.
Fred Gabriel, 430 Sunset, Longmont. And of course I'm with a group called You Can't Raise Children in an Oil Field. I'll try and be low-key this week and uninspiring. There are knowns and there are unknowns. I'm not going to get all Rumsfeldian on you here. Let's just stick with the unknowns. I'm not even going to talk about facts or science either. Children and pregnant women's health. What will happen to them? Let's just say unknown. Who will lose the lottery and get a well next to their house? Unknown. How far do these gases really travel? Any experts here? Nobody knows. Unknown. What will happen to our property values? Unknown. What will be the long-term health effects 10, 15, 20 years down the road on us all? Unknown. Will this town implode under the weight of all this? Unknown. Truck traffic, 24-hour-a-day racket, the roads crumbling, all unknowns. Your ability to regulate after the permits have been issued and the hole's been drilled, really unknown. Can we all just agree that we have a lot of unknown variables? We can all agree on that. So with all these unknown variables, what are we supposed to do? Let's just roll the dice and drill, baby, drill. What are we to fear? A lawsuit. Don't fear your health. Don't fear for your property value. Don't fear for your town. Just fear that lawsuit. This country was not built on fear. It was built on bravery. We need some. I wanted to ask one question, but my technical advisor told me it was not allowed. So, of course, I'm going to ask it anyway. Maybe you guys could address it later on tonight. A little bird told me some time ago, a good source, that this town had been threatened. This town had been somewhat terrorized. That if we didn't roll over, there would be a price to pay. So my question is, how hardball are these guys playing? How heavy are they hitting? Have we been threatened? Have we been terrorized? Have we been influenced? Have we been compromised? How can we be in negotiations with someone with all this going on if we're being pushed so far as to be influenced in the wrong direction? This is my last time here. I've moved on to Plan B, which is ban it, and I think we're in the majority. No one is going to take this town, this diamond, and chunk it in the garbage. Not without one heck of a fight. Thanks.
Thank you. Walt Engelhart, followed by Russ Bowman.
Walt Engelhart, 10650 Yellowstone Road, Longmont. Since I spoke to you before 2 weeks ago, I have done some investigating. I come before the council tonight not only to talk with you, but to the anti-frackers. Whether you all know it or not, the environmental movement is playing right into the hands of those that wish to destroy America as we know it. That said, I know all of us as homeowners want to protect our property values and what we have invested in that property. Well, the mineral rights people and those at least from the owners of the mineral rights do have rights too. I want to talk just about a little bit about Top, who is a family-owned business. They are drillers. As drillers, lease the rights from the mineral rights owners and are on a time frame to get the job done. Otherwise, they lose their rights to the lease and lose their investment. Now, Top is not what you would call an evil big oil conglomerate. They are a small business and are what I would consider a neighbor. They hire other small business people and in the area to haul in water tankers, truck drivers, other small business people in the area, welders, dozers, operators, etc. They buy from local concrete and pipe suppliers, thus helping the local economy. Top produces gas from Greeley to Erie and Longmont to Fort Lupton. That gas goes into a local pipeline that is used likely to heat your home. Small business is the backbone of this country. Regulations don't hurt the big corporations. They only hurt the small businessman. Let's see. And they can't afford the delays in the cost of the regulations, whereas the larger corporations can. We need to strike a balance between regulations that protect the homeowner and the small businessman so the natural gas that we use to heat our homes is cost effective. What it takes is cooperation between the two. Also cooperation between the city when it comes and the state when it comes to the regulations. The answer is cooperation, not litigation. Top is willing to cooperate and make this happen. and be a good neighbor. Scare tactics are being used to rise up the neighbors around the wells. There is no real evidence that these oil wells are a danger to human life. We have more of a danger to our children and families from the dairy and meat industry, where chemicals and antibiotics are being used on animals in confined spaces to keep them alive. These are transferred from them to the food we eat. This results in damage to our bodies. Thank you.
Next up is Joel Champion.
Or maybe Russ Bowman.
Oh, excuse me. Russ Bowman.
Good evening, and thanks very much for hearing me. I'm Russ Bowman. I live at 1731 Sumac Street here in Longmont, and I've been here since about 1968. I mentioned last week, I'll tell you again, I don't want to see anybody's health impaired. I don't want to see anybody's property damaged. After the last marathon session that we had, I wanted to educate myself a little more on claims made by those who are seeking to sway you on the banning of fracking, even though that was not the discussion of that night, and it's not the one of this night. But on Thursday morning, I woke up, got my paper, full-page ad. We now have a ballot issue, and so people will glare at you and try to get you to capitulate. I'm an engineer. My whole life has been involved with data and with proof of theories. I went home and I called several government offices and businesses. Their job is to collect data on various things, understand risk, estimate what's the probability of it occurring, and then determine what's going to be the cost and how do I mitigate it or how do I compensate you for it. I called the Colorado State Property Tax Administration Office and I called Boulder County Assessor's Office. Here's the result. There is no known data set in either office that can show any cause and effect relationship between directional drilling or fracking and your property value. They don't know of any. So I called the Boulder County Public Health Office, asked the same question. Here's the result. There is no known data set that shows that there is any relationship between fracking a well, directional drilling, and water quality. They know all about broken casings, they know all about surface spills, and they say that they find that it will be detected, mitigated, and corrected usually before the state inspector even gets there because the company's already taken care of it. I called my insurance company's actuarial office. Result, there is no known cause and effect relationship between the industry and either my auto insurance, my health insurance, or my property insurance. That means there is no exclusion like there is for mold. If I have a house and it's got stucco, you don't get covered for mold. Nor can I find a defined coverage for drilling and fracking. You can't buy special insurance like you do for flooding. So my suggestion is that tonight, you're going to be depending on cool heads and even tempers. And I believe that you have them. I give you credit. You do. You've put up with a lot. I'd like to ask you 4 things as a citizen. 1, ignore this hysteria and threats. These are people who want their life in a constant state of crisis, and in Southern California, they're suing to stop solar panels being put in the desert because it's going to harm the tortoise. Second, top operatings agreed to 45 days delay. I don't think that you need to have a moratorium. Far better, Mayor, establish a bond with the people that you're working with. It's better than any contract you will ever write. Mr. Bagley, if you really think that the state is trying to overpower the city of Longmont, by all means pursue that case. But for heaven's sakes to all of you, don't get the thing to where we pay. We're going to pay the county or the city, and we're going to pay the state. Both lawyers. Thank you, sir.
Joel Champion.
My name is Joel Champion, and I live at 1733 Preston Drive in Longmont. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The last time I addressed this council, I expressed my concern that the proposed oil and gas ordinance was not ready for adoption. I understand now that revisions are being considered, and many of the concerns that I had at that time are being addressed. Over time, this council and its predecessors have created an organizational structure designed to best serve the people of Longmont. Many of the departments, boards, and commissions deal specifically with health, welfare, safety of our citizens, and with the environment and quality of life issues. Their missions and areas of responsibility have been incorporated into local ordinances. When the state creates and implements statutes and regulations, they take precedence over our local ordinances. Cities and counties are not permitted to preempt such statutes and regulations, but they should be provided the opportunity to participate in making policy decisions that affect them directly. This evening, I would like to review a few facts and raise several issues. First, the technology of horizontal drilling and fracturing provides flexibility in the location of wellheads to access subsurface energy assets. Second, the sovereignty of personal property rights is important to both surface and subsurface property owners. Further, the state regulations relating to the permitting and placement of oil and gas wellheads may overlap with our proposed regulation or with ordinances in many of our existing city departments, boards, and commissions. Therefore, it makes sense that the City of Longmont should be permitted to participate with the GOCC and with oil and gas operators during the permitting process to assure that oil and gas wellheads are not located in residential areas or in controversial areas. While I understand the state's rationale for providing consistent regulations across all counties, I believe that our founders had it right when they said, the best government is that which is closest to the governed. I believe that the City of Longmont should be empowered to participate meaningfully in important decisions that relate to the locations of oil and gas wells within our city limits. The city has a fundamental obligation not only to protect the health, welfare, and safety of our citizens and our environment, but also to preserve property owners' rights. Please make every effort to work closely with the Office of the Attorney General, the COGCC, and COGA to develop creative ways to work together to resolve your differences, to avoid litigation, and to move forward in a positive and constructive manner. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Marilyn Belchinski.
Marilyn Belchinski, 1703 Whitehall Drive, Longmont. I'm going to offer you a really simple solution. I'd like to request an extension of the moratorium on the gas and oil drilling until mid-November. Several other communities in the state have extended moratoriums in place and risk nothing by doing so. Please protect our city, at least until that time. An initiative regarding fracking is anticipated for the November ballot and will give the citizens of this city the opportunity to make their voices heard. Everyone who is registered to vote in this city will have that option. The petitions are about to circulate and make this happen. I invite everyone on the city council, city staff, and everyone who wishes to see this initiative succeed to keep fracking out of the city of Longmont to come on Thursday, June 7th, 6:30 to 9:30 p.m., Front Range Community College, off of Pike Street, to sign this petition. Once more, I request the moratorium extension until November, when you will really hear the people of the city of Longmont speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Don Bennett, followed by Travis Whipple.
Mr. Mayor, I came here to thank you and the city, the police department.
Can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, I will. I'm sorry. My name is Don Bennett. I live at 433 Dixon Street. This past 7 months, I have not received not one traffic violation until Saturday. I made a left turn on 3rd Avenue on Main Street. I had my black belts buckled, but my arm was not on the strap was not over my shoulder. That mistake, Mayor, is going to cost me $100. I live on Social Security. That's my sole income. If the chief of police does not have nothing else better to do, he made Main Street look like the 4th of July with the lights on the police cars pulling people over. That's a disgrace to this town. An absolute disgrace. If he has nothing better to do, let him solve the robbery at my home of over $2,000 about 5 years ago. He can't do it. He is not qualified. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Travis Wimple. All right, we'll move on to David Filster.
Hi, my name is David Pelster. I live at 1574 Goshawk Drive here in Longmont. Good evening, Mayor Coombs, Council. Just really confused about what happened 2 weeks ago at City Council with the whole oil and gas regulations. After all, they were your regulations. The council influenced those regulations, directed staff to make those regulations, and yet they didn't get voted for. And I think one of the pieces that's really confusing me why they wouldn't get passed was based on the premise of a lawsuit. But the council knew that going forward the whole time, that it was going to potentially court a lawsuit. Another thing no one's talking about is the tax money that's already been invested in the oil and gas regulations. I did some napkin calculations. No one's ever told me what they were, but I estimate with the city staff over 6 months plus expert outside oil and gas attorney, we're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 that's already been invested in these regulations. So why give up now? Why? I don't get it. I did also have a thought for a compromise. There's this community that lives northeast Longmont called Sundance. There's a very large residency of oil and gas, people that work in the oil and gas industry. Why not just put a 52 well pad right next to their homes? They like it. They want it. Win-win situation. We've already talked about directional drilling tonight. Everyone gets their property. They can go underneath all the city, get everywhere from that location of the city, and we all win. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, David. Shelley Bassman, followed by Joe Bassman.
I'm Shelley Bassman. We live at 3414 Lakeview Circle in Longmont. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I too was nonplussed by what came down 2 weeks ago. David has outlined the nonplussables in it. And the only thing that based on the comments from Council, the only thing I could conclude was that after 6 months of hard work by staff and the citizens of Longmont, that COGA moved in. In the 2 weeks between the first and the second readings, Tisha was on the phone a lot. Although we took 2 phone calls to one councilwoman, and another probably didn't need any, and another thought that COGA was, we had to call COGA's bluff. And my understanding is that COGA doesn't, well, actually COGA does make the regulations. But it's the COGCC that you go to talk to about. And Tisha Schuler was addressed directly as somebody being very angry with her. And I'm trying to figure out what was going on. Well, it seems like in the 2 weeks between the first reading and the second reading, the industry that by its own modest calculations has more money than God moved in and threatened Longmont. When I get a threatening phone call or a phone call from someone with whom I do not wish to speak, because they are threatening, it's real easy. You don't have to talk to them. I wish you had done that and kept as your primary focus the citizens of Longmont. Miss Schiller lives in 4 Mile Canyon. She claims to breathe the same air that everyone else does, but no, she doesn't. People who live 350 feet from a consolidated oil pad, which is a heavy industrial operation, breathe very different air. I'm not against oil and gas development. Our son works in an parallel or an industry that serves remote sensing radio equipment. And he was really concerned about our opposition. But I told him that it's not against oil and gas, but it's against oil and gas in the city 350 feet from people's homes. With, and it's that needs to be addressed. The United States is now an oil exporting country, petroleum products net exporter. We do not need these installations 350 feet from our homes in order to heat our homes or run our cars. We're exporting it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Joe Bassman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, city staff, members of city council. I'm Joe Bassman. I reside at 3414 Lakeview Circle, where I own the surface rights. This evening, you'll all be discussing a moratorium which went into effect beginning December 20th, 2011. I have a brief timeline here of the events that I pulled from the minutes of the meetings. On December 20th, 2011, Mayor Coombs moved, seconded by Levison, to impose a moratorium on the acceptance of land use applications, et cetera, et cetera. The vote was taken on the motion. There was an amendment, and it carried 7-0. This was December 20th. The first hearing occurred January 10, 2012, and that passed 7-0. The second hearing occurred January 24th. That passed 6-0 with Bagley absent. It didn't go into effect. The moratorium didn't officially become law until 10 days after publication. I'm not sure of the exact date, but that would have placed it at about February 3rd. Now, this moratorium originally was proposed to be drafted by the City Council on the 20th, eventually went into effect on the 3rd, but nonetheless, you'll be discussing this evening that it had an effective date on the day you asked to have the ordinance drawn up. Now, what I'm getting at is I don't understand what's preventing you from simply making a motion tonight to bring forward an ordinance that would be effective today, that would be effective June 17th, that would be effective at any arbitrary date, and have that ordinance carry forward until the middle of November, and that would be an ordinance that would require a simple majority to pass. So I simply have the question, why is it that we're going through an emergency ordinance procedure? You don't need to be perplexed about whether or not to pass the regulations. If you extend this moratorium to November 15th, then we can leave it to the citizens to decide. Let them decide on our health, our future, and our Longmont. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this agenda item?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs, City Council. I was not permitted to speak 2 weeks ago. Actually, I had a number of points I wanted to raise at that time, many of which
Can you give your name and address, please?
have been dealt with. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. Okay. Just want to reiterate a couple of particular things. As Shelley pointed out, we are an oil exporting country now. What is the rush? The price of natural gas has really dipped. The oil companies want to preempt the possibility of local protections, so they want to get everything legally on board so that when the science comes in more replete, it will be too late to do anything about it. As Fred pointed out, most of the stuff we really don't know yet, and when the facts come in, like Erie, for example, like Pavilion, Wisconsin, what will we be able to do then if we have already forfeited our rights? I agreed with much of what Joel Champion said tonight, and also 2 weeks ago, but particularly that the best government is that is closest to the people. Well, that's us. That's us right here. by city ordinance or by voter referendum. And I think we really need to look at that. And the city's ordinances, which have already been checked out and gone over thoroughly for 6 months, which are very minimal, setbacks and no open pits and stuff like that, we need to put those in place and then extend the moratorium until November to where the people have a right to vote on it. I am really chagrined that a couple of people tonight indicated, one person, Mr. Whipple, indicated at the beginning that there's this secret organization called Agenda 21, which is out to destroy our country because all environmental or what was it, sustainability is to destroy the country, which is patently insane. If we don't save our planet, how the heck are we going to save our society? And another person said that regulations only hurt small business. Well, regulations, don't cyanide in our drinking water like they used to do in the gold mines, who also said that anyone who's against fracking is out to destroy America. We need to have some sanity and some rational conversation going on, and I appreciate the City Council for looking into this as serious as you have done for the last 8 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Council, Mayor Coombs, Michael Belmont, 841 Tenacity Drive in Longmont. And I kind of wanted to address some logic that I heard tonight. But first, I want it to be clear and understood. I think this perhaps has not been. You may know that I was born, bred, and buttered in Houston, Texas, the center of the universe for oil and gas, and understand it quite a bit. My dad was an insurance agent and insured a lot of non-operators, so I understand mineral rights and such as that. And I'm very empathetic with those things. And I am actually supportive of the oil and gas industry. I could be said to be a drill baby driller, even perhaps. But only if we give equal shrift to health baby health, which is in fact the mandate of the COGCC, to drill baby drill and also the health baby health of the citizens. But I want to address two things I heard tonight. One, property values, and I think it was Russ that indicated he did some research, and I appreciate that. However, he asked his question, are property values influenced by oil and gas operations? And they said, basically, we don't know, I think they said, because they don't gather information of that type. When property values go up or down, that's not their job to ask why or what influenced it. Their job is to simply appraise property and tax it accordingly based on market value or values. So if he'd asked them, do you collect data about what drives the prices and the values of properties, I might have considered his point valid. Also, the point that's often made that we heat our homes with gas and we drink out of water bottles that are petroleum-based, and we're grateful for such, and we should be supportive of this industry, as I said I am. However, we eat meat, we drink milk. Does that mean we should have a feedlot 350 feet from our house? Not only it does not mean that it wouldn't be appropriate, it would be illegal, if I'm not mistaken, in the city of Longmont. That's it. I just wanted to address some of the logical things that we hear discussed here and just give my own little spin on that. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? If not, I will close the public hearing on this item. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for staff. So I'd like to know from both Eugene and Dale, what's our exposure if we do not pass the emergency moratorium as far as acreage and other interests in town?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney.
What kind of exposure? Of
Exposure. If we don't pass this extension of the moratorium, our moratorium ends on June 17th. What's the exposure we have? What's the exposure?
the exposure out there, I mean, it's hard to quantify. Certainly, we've gotten letters from TOP and KOGA explaining their commitment. I think my job as city attorney is to position the city to have legally enforceable mechanisms to achieve its objectives. And that's why I drafted the moratorium extension as I did. You know, I don't know how omnipotent KOGA is. I think there are a lot of operators out there that I'm not sure what that relationship is. And like I said, as city attorney, I can't rely on other people. I think my job is to allow the city to control its own destiny.
Dale, you want to chime in?
Dale Rademacher, Director of Public Works and Natural Resources. We do have a map. I was going to show here. City Council, you saw a map similar to this several months ago when we were just starting our research and looking into the areas around the incorporated area land of the city and the potential for those areas to be open for drilling. And so looking at that, I think in this far southwest part of the city, this area right here is the airport. This area around it is the land that's owned by Amgen and Seagate, and then another industrial area here. So the areas that are shown generally in pink are areas that either A, we haven't fully verified whether or not the mineral rights have been severed from the property and or whether or not there's been any leases issued. I think the thing that's important, though, is that the work that we have done, if you remember some of the concerns in the past were things like the municipal golf courses. So here's Twin Peaks Golf Course, Sunset Golf Course, and Ute Creek. We have been able to verify that the city owns the mineral rights and that there aren't any leases on any of those golf courses. We have also looked around McIntosh Lake up here in the northwest part of the city. The mineral rights there are held by the Lake McIntosh Company, and they are not leased either. City owns about 40% of that particular company right now. We have not finished work on the airport property, but that's an area that my guess is if you went to try to drill, number one, you're quite a ways west of the city, and secondly, it's probably got issues with the FAA and all kinds of issues out there. So, but honestly, we haven't finished that work. There are a couple of large parks in the city that I think are pretty small risk of potential drilling. Those would be Garden Acres and Clark Centennial. And again, I'm not saying that they can drill. We simply haven't gotten all the detail with regards to the mineral rights. Those parks were acquired by the city. In the case of Clark Park, it was back in the 70s. And in the case of Garden Acres, that was in the 1980s. So we're finishing up that work. Now, I think if you look down here in the south, I'd call it the southeast part of the city, sort of an industrial area near the river. Again, it's not proximate to residential areas, but it's within the corporate boundaries of the city. A lot of that is city-owned. That's the city's wastewater treatment plant, and then you've got the Pavlakis open space property. You know, frankly, the biggest area, Councilman Santos, is out here in Weld County. Those are the areas that we have been focusing on, that we've done a lot of work on to understand where the city has the mineral rights and where we have leases. And then obviously some of this area right here in the Boulder County side of the line that is currently held by TOP. Down here is McLean Western and Concepts Direct. It's our understanding that those properties are eligible to be drilled on, and that there are active wells in that area. I know Brian has made contact with some of the property owners. This is the West Grange development out in southwest Longmont. I think they, as the property owner, are currently researching the status of their mineral rights, sort of like the city of Longmont is on our property. So We're not different than what some of the private property owners are trying to do. So to answer the question, I think our research has shown that it is diminishing, that the areas that could be subject to drilling are less than what we had shown you back in December when we first started down the path. We have frankly not gotten through all the detail at this point, though for me to be able to stand here and tell you with exactness that some of the sites I pointed out can't be. I don't know if that helps or not. But.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. I have one more question. And it's not for either one of you, it's for Harold. I'd like to, can you give us an update on the negotiations that you guys have had at the top?
I think the discussions have been very productive. Frankly, Mayor and Council were getting ready to bring those to discuss with the Council at the next Council meeting in terms of the progress and what we have. But the discussions have been very productive, and based on the direction that we've been giving, I think we're moving at a good pace.
Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
My question is for Dale. Sorry, Dale. In the map that you showed us before, what are the questionable areas that are in residential zoning?
Mayor Combs and Councilmember Finley, Valerie, can you take the lights down again? So specifically the areas that are residentially zoned, it's this West Range area out here. That used to be a McStain development that was going to come forward. The area that's residentially zoned also is immediately to the east of the city's recreation center. That used to be a KB Homes development that's actually planted. Harvest Junction was what it was, the residential portion of that development. Up here on the Ludlow property, again, that's the portion of it that's slated to be residential. But to be specific, I'm not sure if your question, Councilmember Finley, is areas that have existing homes,
yes,
or areas that are slated to be developed residentially in the city's comprehensive plan. Those are two different.
Yeah, that's two different questions, isn't it? My question is, where is it in question? Are there homes within 750 feet of these areas that are in question?
I'm looking at my colleagues from planning. I would say up here probably, because you've got homes right across the railroad track. I'm not sure what this development is, but probably at the perimeter, at the very edge of that area, you probably have homes that, if we do the circles of 750 feet, would be touching those areas.
In that area.
Right up in here.
And who has those mineral rights? We don't know yet?
We don't know. We're trying to get a hold of Mr. Ludlow. My head would tell me that Greg owns them, but because his family has owned the property for quite some time, but I can't stand here and tell you that definitively right now.
Okay, but is that the only place?
Up here in the far northeast, this is the Providence development. Again, on the very south part of that, you're going to be next to the Sundance development. That's just to the south of it. So, Councilmember Finley, I would say if I went with a sort of a microscope around, I could probably find areas that houses, existing houses, would be within 750 feet.
Okay.
Councilmember Witt.
But tagging on to that, you'd have to work really, really hard to place a drill. You'd have to work really hard to locate a drill site on purpose next to somebody's living room. Is that not so?
Mayor Combs and Councilmember Witt, I guess the way I'd answer that is under the current regulations, it could be located there. Now, whether or not it would be hard, I think it would be, I would hope they wouldn't, that it would not be real practical that they would want to locate
It'd be rather perverse for them to do that.
It would not be a good neighbor thing.
It would not. Okay, thank you.
I guess I'd kind of like to chime in here. I know COGA and COGC came out and gave a question and answer period on a Monday night before our last meeting, and I think I was the only council person here. And what I came back from that was that like nobody really knows. I mean, the setbacks are really designed for safety issues and not for health reasons. And nobody really knows the true health effects of putting 16 wellheads on a pad and putting that 350 feet from someone's house. And we may not know for 10 years, but science is a tricky thing. It's, double-blind studies. It's hard to prove anything. It's easier to disprove something. To me, I value health over anything, and I went away from that thinking, geez, CLGC doesn't know the health effects. Nobody knows. Why would we want to take a chance? That's my 2 cents. I was elected to protect the health and welfare of the citizens, and to me, that's more important than money. And I don't really understand the big push for not wanting to, if we're in good negotiations with top operating right now, that's great. I don't think our regulations have all that much to do with top. It's what's the next operator. It's what's in the future, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. It's not about right now with this operator necessarily. And why this big concern over not passing the 45-day moratorium? If it should be a pretty much a neutral thing. If top's not planning to drill anyway, I don't understand the super effort that's being made to not pass that. It's my personal opinion. But anyway, Councilmember Witt.
You jogged my memory about something. I never knew about that meeting, about Koga coming and talking to people. Yeah. So when you say you were the only council member who showed up, that's because none of the rest of us knew about it. So
okay, sorry.
I'm glad you were there, though.
Okay. Councilmember Bagley.
Here we go again. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I've thought about the moratorium, and I don't look at this as, I'm not concerned. We have our letter from TOP that basically says that they're not going to be drilling for 45 days. I've always said I've trusted our neighbors. I know where they live. I can call them on the phone, and I can express my concerns. They've always been responsive. I hope that the city's negotiations with them continue to move in a positive direction, and look forward to when you named a well. I don't know if you have a party or whatever, but I'll be there. But my recollection was, and the next morning, I thank Councilman Samori for being the statesman of the evening 2 weeks ago. I think the 45 days was actually a good idea in retrospect, because what it does is allows us to make potential regulations better, and has the opportunity to work with our good friends at Koga, Ms. Schuler. And I'm for the 45-day moratorium for no other reason than deadlines stimulate progress. And my concern would be if we don't pass the moratorium, we then miss our 45-day deadline, and the regs would die. And I don't think we should let them die. What I'd like to see, and I've expressed this to Ms. Schuler and other members of the state consortium, I would be totally fine, wouldn't worry about a lawsuit, no problem, under basically the following 3 conditions. This is what I'm concerned about. 1, no industrial activity in residential areas. 2, I'd like a way for voluntary setbacks so our oil and gas partners can have a fast track to drilling. If they agree to do it a little bit further back, they don't have to go through the public process, and their lives and their pocketbooks are easier, as are those of Longmont. And then I'd also like a commitment from the COGCC that before they give a permit to anyone here locally, that we would be given the opportunity to provide input regarding well location. That's pretty much to me what the regs mean. And I'm not the one at the state level who determines whether or not they'll play ball, but to me those are the issues that are most important to us. And I think that everybody wins if we can figure out a creative solution through an MOU, IGA, whatever, to basically solve those concerns. And as excited as I am about the surface use agreement, that is not the solution, because that's one operator on the city's private land. It doesn't deal with 10 years from now, 3 years from now, other operators, other locations. So anyway, I just say that by way of, this is what I would hope that we come up with over the next month and a half. But I think that if we don't pass the 45-day moratorium because we're getting along with TOP and we've got an SUA, I think that's very short-sighted. And I would like to move that we pass ordinance 2012-36.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. To add an additional supporting comment to Councilmember Bagley's statement, it's not just the city's involvement with TOP and our surface use agreement. You may want to also think about those property owners that have recently acquired that property in West Grange. If they want to be able to exercise their surface rights, well, right now, there may not be a house 750 feet, but having multiple well sites within certain blocks of acreage may actually prevent them from coming forward with platting a new neighborhood or accessing and leveraging use of the surface on a property that they acquired. And frankly, the structure of government is to protect a lot of people's property rights, and I think that no one has not acknowledged that we have to balance the property rights of surface owners and mineral holders' rights. So I would advocate that we pass this moratorium, but also 45 days is a pretty swift time period, and while we may be dedicated to getting it done that quickly, having a deadline that short might not be as supportive of getting the best regulations and negotiations done with the industry.
Councilmember Simard.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. First, I'd like to thank TOP Operating for the letter that they sent us. It shows good faith on their part, and I'm glad that the negotiations with the city are going expeditiously. To me, passing the moratorium will have no negative effect on TOP Operating since they've already agreed to the 45 days. But as Councilman Bagley stated, I think by having a deadline, it pushes us to accomplish what we've set for ourselves to accomplish with our partners and eventually with the COGCC, because it's their bluff that we really need to call. So I'm in favor of passing the 45-day moratorium. Again, it'll have no negative impact on TOP Operating's operations, and it gives us the breathing room that we need to get what we're trying to accomplish accomplished.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'm still unclear on is, so there'll be no negative effects if we do pass the extension of the moratorium, but I'm not convinced that there's going to be any negative effects if we don't. So can somebody explain to me what are the negative effects of not passing this moratorium?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs.
Councilmember
Gladly, Councilmember Witt. It's this simple. Politically speaking, there are certain members of council who I think don't want to pass the regs, and by keeping the 45 days out there will allow people the opportunity to continue to approach COGA and communicate with them. It will allow us the opportunity to continue debate amongst ourselves, and it keeps the issue on the table. As much as I would like the fracking issue removed from the table, it's not done yet. The bread has not risen, and so that's essentially it.
Councilmember Witt.
But, see, we can operate, we can still, what happens is it just reverts to back what it was, in December, and we didn't have mass hysteria and people dying in the streets, and so it just reverts back to how it was before. And since we have commitment from TOP, we're the only ones that we know of that are looking to drill, And no other group has said, we are waiting in the wings to come and drill as soon as your moratorium expires. So it seems to me, I'm not feeling the sense of urgency here. Help me.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. I will try to help. I think what Eugene Mayer, our city attorney, mentioned today is that he's recommending this because of the fact that we have to have some legal leg to stand on and a position that no matter what happens, I mean, we're paying him to be the fail-safe guy, to say we're covered. And having not passing this moratorium extension and having the possibility of new regulations evaporate and revert back to regulations that are 11 years old, staff has already told us that the 11-year-old regulations are not really good. So what would be the downside? We all agreed that the old regulations were not the best, and they weren't even sufficient anymore. So the negative side is we consciously vote to say we're going to support 11-year-old regulations that are not good, that we know are not good. And given that choice, and saying, well, let's just extend the moratorium, work on things a bit more, maybe get some more, polish on the stone, rather than say, well, we'll just go back to the diamond in the rough and don't know what we're really going to have. I mean, and again, it's not just one operator we're dealing with. The fact that we don't know if there isn't something else out there. On all those things that Mr. Rademacher told us, that people don't know who has the leases, if they're leased, if it's been severed. This covers us for the unknowns, just like an insurance policy. I mean, if you want to do away with your insurance policy and you're satisfied with insurance coverage that might have been good 11 or 12 years ago, then, you may have to deal with the consequences. But I don't want to deal with those consequences for 87,000 people in this town when I know there's a better option.
Councilmember Samori.
Well, Councilmember Levison just stole my example that I was going to give you. We all have car insurance. We all have life insurance, hopefully, and health insurance. We don't buy the insurance because we think we're going to get sick or because we're going to get into an accident. We buy them so that in case we do, we're covered. So the 45-day moratorium gives us that insurance in case there's any chance, known or unknown to us right now, of anybody coming to want to drill.
Councilmember Witt.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to pull a quick one over on Longmont, they would have come in and they would have done this before we even thought to upgrade our regulations, would they not? Yes, they would. That's what's confusing me here. And what I can't understand is who decided that suddenly this was the place and this was the time and this is where we're going to make this stand. We're going to make this stand in Longmont. And I want to know who paid for those people to go door to door and tell people to contact council members and tell us to ban fracking. I want to know who paid for that. I want to know who so I know who is lobbying us on one side, but I don't know who decided that Longmont's the place, now's the time. This has happened, we've had relationships with TOP before, as I understand it, yeah? So I'm just having a hard time figuring out who's pulling the strings on the other side and why this blew up now. And so the only urgency I'm feeling has been manufactured by people I don't know. And that really kind of makes me scratch my head. So I am not going to support this. I seconded it 2 weeks ago because it was evident if I didn't, then I was going to lose Councilmember Smorey. So I did, just to give us a little bit of breathing space, but I'm not going to vote for it because I think I was very, very clear last time that I was not going to vote for another extension of the moratorium. So I'm not going to vote for it. But some questions that I just want to plant in people's minds. Who's paying on the other side? We were chosen. We were chosen. Longmont was chosen for some reason. I don't know why. But I didn't pick this fight, but I'm not going to be bullied by either side. So, have at it.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I too have trouble passing a moratorium when we don't really need one. I think it sends a negative message to those that we want to negotiate with in the future and those that can give us what we want. I know that I'm more likely to negotiate with folks who I am amenable with and friendly with than I am those who are trying to keep me from doing my business. So I have a problem. I want to vote for the moratorium, but I don't think it would make any difference. There isn't anybody who's going to pull. There's no one who's going to drill in the next 45 days, whether we pass it or not. And to say that, oh, it's a negotiating tool, I just don't believe that. I'm more likely to negotiate with people who are dealing with me on a friendly basis rather than those who are trying to deal with me in a negative way. I struggled with this question today, whether I'd vote for this or not, and I did the pro and con. You know, how you draw the line down the middle of the paper and you've got the pro and con. The pro is that some of my council members would still like me. The con is that it sends a negative message. The con is it doesn't make any difference whether we pass the 45-day moratorium or not. There won't be any drilling in the next 45 days. We don't need it. So, you know, I couldn't come up with any more pros. I really couldn't. And I wanted to because I wanted that line to work out, but I couldn't make it work out. At the end of the day, as Councilmember Bagley said 2 weeks ago, you have to look at who you trust. Well, I trust my neighbors and I trust the people that we're dealing with. They've in good faith come and dealt with us, and we're making progress, and I don't see any reason to impede that progress.
Councilmember Levison.
So, Councilmember Witt, you know, I don't feel that anybody has led us down this path. In fact, this whole conversation was really begun by the Weld County Commissioners in the joint meeting we had. They were like, you know, get your regs up to snuff, talk to people, get on board, and that was where the idea came from. It was not some nefarious cloud of mosquitoes that came and bit us and infected us. I mean, that's the first time we had a substantive public discussion on these issues. And they gave us their perspective, and they said, these are the things that we dealt with early on you need to look out for. Road damage, you know, other infrastructure issues, and all this other kind of stuff. And they said, you know, here's some ideas, go work it out. And figure it all out and learn about it. And basically, if you want to say who started it, blame the Weld County Commissioners. Do you not trust the Weld County Commissioners? Did you not find valid anything they said? I mean, really, there wasn't some other outside party that came in. We had not really had a public discussion prior to that meeting. And so there's the genesis that maybe we've all forgotten where we started on this conversation. And, you know, we all had birthday cake and sang happy birthday to Weld County, and we had a great time. And you know, it was, all of us then said, well, let's go and have staff look at this stuff. So we're the ones who started it. Where'd the idea come from? Weld County, the most friendly place for oil and gas in Colorado. So to make some, substantive comment around, do we not know the people that who started all this? Well, we do know them. It's those guys, those gals from Weld County. And we had, kind of an eye-opening conversation about how things happen in Weld County and how many years they've been doing it. And we consulted and looked at their stuff. Our staff has talked to their staff. Our staff has talked to people all over the state. We have a council member who sat down for 8 weeks in Denver, with his livelihood suffering. And do we not trust him? Do we not trust the whole process that we directed all the way along? I mean, I guess I'm getting a little frustrated because, why now? It's because we started the conversation with somebody who put that on our agenda for a joint meeting. So none of us had the idea to stick it on the joint meeting agenda. They're the ones who did it. So if you're looking for somebody to say, who started this? Well, the Weld County Commissioners did. Simple.
I guess I'd like to weigh in here, because Katie wants to know, well, who's behind the opposition? Well, I've kind of kept track, and I've gotten about 600 different text messages on, to ban fracking or this, sort of thing. And, obviously ROAR's a grassroots organization by the citizens. My gut feel is the citizens of Longmont do not want fracking in their residential neighborhoods. And I think, it's going to be proven out. And they're our constituents. They're the ones that we should be looking at for, they're not being backed by big business money or whatnot. And, when this thing first started, I didn't know anything about fracking, and, there's a lot of hysteria. At first we thought when eagles were going to fly over Union Reservoir, they're going to start just dropping out of the sky and stuff like that. I got myself educated. I'm not worried about that or contaminating our water supply. I just am, really concerned about putting, no one's ever had 16, 20 wellheads on a single pad right next to residential neighborhoods for a long enough period of time to know the effects of that. And that's what this is all about. And this is not about what's going to happen with TOP. I'm not worried about TOP. I know our negotiations are going well. This is just, I just don't see a downside to extending the moratorium 45 more days. And, I agree with Brian Bagley's rationale. And, we directed our city staff to go through all this work, and I just don't want, I know we can make some tweaks, make things better, but I just don't want to drop the ball when we're this close to having something that's, 10 years from now, people are going to look back at the legacy of this council and say, wow, these guys really stood up and protected the citizens of Longmont. So I'm going to vote to extend the moratorium. Councilmember Witt.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Levison. Yes, but who paid C-Force to go door to door? That is not free. I know this. I know it's not free to have people go to door to door. And maybe you paid for it. Okay, you know who paid for it? I would like to know who paid for it. Okay, thank you. Because I think we would all like to know who orchestrated that. But circling back, I wanted Councilmember Bagley. I agree with everything he said. We don't want it in residential areas. Agreed. I don't think anybody is fighting to have it in residential areas. I would take issue with the phrase, I just don't want you drilling in my living room, because that adds to the hysteria. You're not trying to find common ground there. You're trying to inspire people to fight, and you're taking liberties. So I object to that phrase. So I agree with that. Wait for voluntary setbacks. I agree with that. I've said that all along. It's just the way in which we go about doing that. And also weighing in on where drills are placed seems pretty reasonable, and I support that. It's just the way in which we work that out. And prophylactically sticking it in our regs, as we are discussing, will, it's like we're going in with guns blazing. And if there are other ways to accomplish what we want to accomplish, then that's what we want to do. So, another thing that was said was, so yes, we are operating, we are working something out with top operating, but what I keep hearing is the thought that, yes, we're going to work things out with top operating, but we wouldn't necessarily do that with just any operator. But I think that's how they do it in other places, is you work out memorandums of understanding with each operator, and they're pretty, it seems like they're pretty standard, pretty boilerplate, and this is, I'm sure that they communicate with each other and say, you know, this is kind of what we, these are the current concerns of Longmont, this is what they're going to want. So obviously we're going to continue to work with each individual operator if they should choose to come to Longmont. And again, I'm dubious as to the amount of oil in Longmont, Colorado. That has not been proved to me. And I believe this is how it is handled in Greeley and Frederick and other places. So the point that is made that you don't see the downside of extending the moratorium, I really don't see the upside. It has not, I don't feel the sense of urgency. Yes, we need to update those regs. They're 11 years old. Yes, we do. But I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. It's not. We will work with these operators so they understand what we expect of them. So I just don't understand it.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I don't want any drills in residential areas either. I also want voluntary setbacks, and I would like to know ahead of time when drillers are coming to Longmont. I want those things too. I think we can get those things without a moratorium, and I think we can get those things in conjunction with updating our regulations. I'm not against updating our regulations. I think we need to, but I think we can have agreements with the oil and gas industry on the residential areas and voluntary setbacks, and I think we can do that without lawsuits, and I think we can have it all, and I think we can do it in a positive way. I don't think it has to be in a negative way. I don't think we have to beat people over the head with what we want. I think we can negotiate what we want as long as we do it in good faith.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'm sorry that Councilmember Witt takes offense to my terminology, but to be clear, I don't want drilling in my living room. Or at least 350 feet away from my living room. At least 350 feet away from my living room. Another thing is, a lot of the comments that I've heard for the last couple weeks, couple months, kind of assume that council follows the mob, whether it's the left or the right. I'm not following the mob. You know, nobody's saying, I've not once said ban fracking. But ironically, I often, when I'm trying to land a client, I always say, the longer it takes to hire an attorney, the more expensive this is going to get. And I'm not talking about legal fees. And for those of us who are worried about lawsuits, I just want to point out, by not passing the regs, that I still think that most of us, prior to the pressure we're going to pass, we now have the expense of a ballot initiative. And if that passes, we will have a lawsuit. And the Supreme Court has already decided how that lawsuit's going to end. So now we're dealing with two expenses, ballot initiative and a lawsuit. Because my fear is, like Paul Tiger said, I think it has a good shot of passing. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I guess I have a question. And I guess also, there's a difference between referent power and coercive power. If I could sit down with my best friend and figure this all out, you know, we'd be not a problem. But when somebody comes in and forces you to do something, automatically, you know, power is less influential. And right now, there's a lot of threats going back and forth on both sides. And you can't go back and just say, okay, we'll be buddies now. I mean, we can work with people, and we'll try to figure it out over the next 45 days. But, you know, we do kind of have to keep pushing the ball forward. And so you've said a few interesting things. And what I'd like, I named off 3 things I want. So basically at the end of this 45 days or whatever, if the state, COGA, the Department of Natural Resources, the governor's office, if they say, no, we are not going to put in writing that we refuse to touch residential areas. No, we're not going to approve of your voluntary setback provision. Or 3, no, we're not going to notify you before we grant a permit. Are you guys going to be on board? Because I'm not on board if we can figure out another way to do it.
Councilmember Santos. Thank you. Apparently we've gone way off topic. We're talking about our rules and regs, and we're supposed to be talking about a 45-day extension of the moratorium. Well, we can have these discussions, and we can be here until tomorrow morning, which is fine. I don't mind having those discussions. I will vote in favor of the moratorium for 45 days. When 45 days is up, we either get the cooperation from the COGA, the COGCC, and the Attorney General's office, or we don't. And as I said, then all bets are off. You know, this isn't gonna affect our negotiations with TOP, and I appreciate the letter, really do. And just for the record, you know, when we supposedly had a brief meeting over here, you know, it was just mentioned that maybe they don't put a permit in for 45 days. So we'll either say that in writing or go to public invited to be heard, because that's good information to know. I appreciate it. I appreciate that there is a ballot initiative. I think Councilmember Witt brings up some very good questions. Some of the research I've done has apparently we're being targeted, as is Erie. There's big money being poured in on both sides, and I'm not going to be bullied by either side. I like to finish I would really like to see the surface use agreement done with TOP as quickly as possible. If there are other operators, I would love for them to come to the city and sit down and talk. I'm not in favor of extending the moratorium to November or February or January of next year. We either deal with it or we don't. You know, it's been mentioned that the Boulder County Commissioners, not tonight, but in other meetings, Boulder County Commissioners they have theirs until February or January of the next year. Love kicking the can down the road. You know, you guys saw what the sausage making material was the other 2 weeks ago of this ordinance, as Councilmember Bagley mentioned to me at lunch the other day. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's very emotionally charged. Take the emotion out. You know, if we're gonna, 45 days is 45 days. We either get it done or we don't. And if we don't get it done, we're back to square one with the rules and regulations that are 15, 16 years old. There's a ballot initiative that's the big money is being poured into, and we'll see how that goes. So I believe that we've talked in circles regarding the rules and regs that are on the table. I kind of saw what was said in the paper, and no one has failed anyone. Not a member of this council has failed anyone in the city of Longmont. We're all trying to find what is the best solution. And as I've said, when I first got elected, we have different ways. We all want what's best for Longmont. We have different ways of achieving it. And that's what representative democracy is. That's what the 7 of us got elected for. It's not pretty, but it's going to get done. So I suggest that there's a motion on the table. And again, we can continue to talk in circles like I am right now, because I haven't had a chance. The rest of you guys have. So, yeah, we either pass it or not.
Councilmember Samori?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I agree with what Mayor Pro Tem Santos just stated, and I think it was pretty clear when I made the motion last time was that 45 days was going to be it, and we were going to work with COGA and COGCC to get to the point that we need. Councilmember Witt, I don't know that there's anything that I can say or anybody else on this council can say that's going to make you feel the right way about it. But, well, I don't know. You keep saying, you're not feeling the urgency, so I don't know what words I can use to make you feel the urgency. I'm at a loss for words for a change. Anyway, the fact is the 45 days keeps anybody, no matter whether there is somebody that we know or we don't know, from coming in. And I don't know that there's any conspiracy or anybody waiting in the wings or any of that. It doesn't matter. It gives us that security that nobody is going to come in and be under the old rules, period. And I'm in agreement that 45 days is it. And whether if we have a deal with COGCC and COGA, great. If not, we move forward with the decisions that we need to make.
All right, let's vote. Everybody ready to vote? Okay, it passes 5-2, but essentially that means it failed.
Point of order.
Excuse me. Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. What is it? You said we had to pass it 6-1. So my question is, what were you referring to? What does the ordinance say?
Mayor and Councilmember Bagley, 6-1 is the vote needed for it to pass as an emergency ordinance. It's written so that if it doesn't pass by 6-1, but is passed by a majority of council, that it would just be normal 10 days after publication instead of the 5 days after publication for an emergency ordinance.
Does it say 6-1 or does it say 67%? Is it 2/3?
It says 3/4.
3/4. Okay.
Charter says 3/4.
All right.
3/4.
Thank you.
Okay, so it was Councilmember Finley and Witt that dissented. All right, let's take another 5-minute break. Is that all right with everybody? All right.
So the moratorium will be extended. It just will. There'll be a gap.
Yeah, there'll be a 3-day gap. Valerie, you can start reading the.
Next item on your agenda is your consent agenda, 9A, resolution.
Okay, go ahead.
Resolution 2012-39. This is a resolution of the City, Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County for funding the underpass on State Highway 119 and pedestrian connections to Hover Road. 9B is Resolution 2012-40. Resolution of the City, Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and county of Broomfield, Boulder County, the cities of Boulder, Lafayette, and Louisville, and the towns of Lyons, Superior, Jamestown, Nederland, Ward, and Erie for the Second Amendment to the Home Consortium Intergovernmental Agreement. 9C is Resolution 2012-41, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the city of Boulder as lead agency for the Boulder County, Broomfield County Home Consortium for a subrecipient agreement for home funds. Item 9D is approve and authorize the mayor to sign the First Amendment to the Highland Ditch Water Carriage Agreement. Item 9E is approve the Focus on Longmont Implementation Plan, also known as your 2012 City Council Work Plan. And item 9F is approve Focus on Longmont Strategic Plan Update. And staff does not have any items to pull.
Okay, are there any items the council would like to remove from the consent agenda? Councilmember Levison.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to remove 9F for asking for an addition to the plan. And I don't know if any... Mayor, I'd like to move... Oh, Councilmember...
Councilmember Witt.
I will move the consent minus F.
Second. All right, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I know I've read this about 3, maybe 4 times. There's one thing that I just wanted to ask if we could add a performance measurement. That would be under, on page 21, when we're talking about culturally inclusive gatherings and events, and there's a notation on under that 5.5 section about implementing intentional follow-up with participants to further promote and support two-way interactions. Yet, in our performance measurements, we don't really have a performance measurement that addresses that issue. It just talks about sense of community, percentage of projects where follow-up is completed. So I would like to ask staff to add a performance measurement. And I know we've done some kind of a soft polling of people when they've attended the inclusive community event, or I don't know what that would look like, but I just would like to have a discussion about whether or not we can add something like that, since it's called out in the previous section.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Levison, Sandy Cedar, Assistant to the City Manager. Yes, our intention with every item on the plan is to be able to have some measures that go with them as time goes on. Because you will be choosing how these things are implemented, and in this year you chose the work plan items in the council work plan. Those are the items that we'll be measuring, that will become part of the report card. The items that are already in progress are things that we will have measures for as well. So for the community involvement piece, the sense of community index that you were referring to is something that we'll do community-wide. And what that does is that kind of measures how much people feel that they belong as part of the community. What we find is that generally the sense of community creates shared efficacy and creates a stronger will of the community to take care of itself in many ways. And so we're going to do a baseline survey of that this year that will be used both for community involvement, for culturally inclusive gatherings, et cetera, because what we can do is we can take that measure community-wide, and then as we finalize community involvement processes or festivals or those types of things, start to take the sense of community index again. It's a very quick survey to start to measure the impact that we're having on the community as a whole with things that are generally considered softer types of events.
And I don't know whether or not we've talked about this in the multicultural plan action committee when we're doing the update to the multicultural action plan. There was a bit of discussion at the last meeting around how do you really know you're getting that increase in people's appreciation for other cultures and for people that are different than they are in the community, beyond just people attending an event. How do you, I mean, where's the measurement? And I see a link to almost everything else under these two categories, but, you know, there are some very specific things when you're talking about, you know, participants in leadership training, percentage of leadership training participants accepted on city boards and commissions. That's real drill down specific, yet it doesn't seem like we've got something. So I don't know whether or not the intention is that it's done through the multicultural plan. I don't know if Karen can address this, because I know you've been working a bit with the committee on it, Karen.
Mayor and council member. So I think, as Sandy had mentioned, the you know, at this point with some of these new strategies that we have added, we have not done the work yet to really look at the performance measurements. So, you know, I would say that indeed that those recommendations for how we do go forth and measure, how we have a deeper understanding and appreciation of cultures, would be work that I would say that the Multicultural Action Committee would wrestle with and work with and bring back some recommendations on how to include those in the performance report. So I think that is the appropriate place for that to happen.
Okay, and I guess the point that I was trying to understand is the sense of community index. You'd have to almost target certain diverse cultural communities, and my understanding is we don't do it like we don't. That's not the methodology we employ to specifically target certain ethnic groups or language subgroups or cultural people that originate from other countries that are within our community, whether or not they're citizens or here on a work visa or whatever. So that's my understanding, is that sense of community is kind of a randomized thing. So does that really address the question of how do we know if there's this two-way dynamic?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Levison, let me explain a little more about the Sense of Community Index. So basically what we're planning to do in 2012 is really do a citywide survey to measure the entire city's sense of community. And you're right that that's randomized. That will be a statistically valid survey. We actually have some help from our police department in creating that survey and carrying that piece out in this year. What we'll take that from that is really a baseline to say, okay, this is what the community feels in general is their sense of community. And then we will add to that different pieces that are targeted populations, not necessarily based on diversity per se, but for example, if we're working on a neighborhood revitalization project, we may take their, in fact, John has done this, taken their sense of community index at the beginning of the process, and then at the end of the process to see if there is more shared efficacy, if there's more understanding and involvement in their community at the end of a community involvement process. So that's one way to measure it. We can do the same types of things with cultural education programs. We can do the same thing. So for example, if we did the same type of thing with maybe the Tamales and Talk program from prior, to measure people's sense of community as they walk in the door and as they walk out the door, because what it does is it helps to sort of put a measure on community involvement and sense of belonging, which is really obviously a very tough thing to measure. So even though I don't know that it's calling for necessarily target groups to be measured around the sense of community index around the cultural piece, as we go through different pieces, and certainly the Multicultural Action Plan will be a piece of that, that as they carry out their plans, they can then use the sense of community index to baseline from where the rest of the community is.
I guess I just found that it was there was a bit of a contrast between some very, very specific performance measurements called out and then ones that it didn't seem that were specifically addressed, even though there was some, it seems like you were calling for some substantive action. So.
And Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Levison, this is one of the toughest areas to measure. The fact that sense of community is one of the only measures that's really out there. I mean, there are other different pieces. You know, we're actually going to bring forward some ideas around crowdsourcing in this next year and really starting to identify electronic age folks in order to try to involve them in the community, and how do you measure that in addition. So this is one of the toughest areas to measure, and certainly with all the effort that we're putting into the branding campaign, the Multicultural Action Committee, all of the different cultural events, all of this type of work. It is tough to measure it. We do measure off attendance. We do measure off of, for example, on the You Belong campaign, we are starting to measure website hits and posts and things like that. But it is definitely a very tough area to measure well.
Councilmember Begley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. A couple quick questions. What's the final document going to look like? How will this be used by city staff?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Bagley. Basically what we're going to do is take this and make it prettier, for lack of a better word. Really put some of the photos and put some of the graphs and charts together and be able to issue this out to the community saying that this is the update of the strategic plan. Make sure that we're getting it out to all the folks that participated in the focus group. We'll put links out to the community, all of that, so that people can kind of see what happens. But really what happens to this document from this point on is up to the council. So in this iteration, the council's work plan, which was the item before this, item E, really is your embodiment of the action steps that you are directing council to take from this strategic plan. Next year, you'll have another opportunity to do it. As the year goes through, you have an opportunity at any point to be able to pull up any of these strategies. This is a planning tool for you to be able to use, to be able to say these are community-supported actions that folks are interested in moving forward with. The timing, the strategic direction is yours to give staff.
Okay, I guess on that note, I guess I really like this starting on page 3. And the reason I wasn't a big fan of the Longmont's vision, I really like the bullet points, but I liked a whole lot better the more in-depth explanation, what followed. For example, promote a healthy business climate. It's not just retail, it's other things. I know that currently we're not just focusing on downtown, we're trying to revitalize downtown. And we've got the mall and other, urban renewal authority areas. The other thing is I know that housing for all might be a little bit of a hotbed right now with the ongoing work that the task force is doing. So, if we're going to print page 1 and 2, I'd like the bullet points and then refer to the explanation rather than put in bullet points and put in the brief explanations that could give the impression that that's all we're focusing on is retail, downtown, and affordable housing. So I guess what I'm asking my fellow council members is, should I so move? I'd make a motion that we actually get rid of the underlying big hollow bullet points, stick with the solid bullet points, and change the word focus to revitalize.
Can you do that again?
I guess the motion I'm making is to keep the 5 bullet points on page 1 and 2, but get rid of the hollow bullet points underneath and change the 4th bullet point from focus on downtown to revitalize downtown.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Bagley, I just want to point out one piece. These came from the original Focus on Longmont plan, so that's why they're listed this way. Okay. We certainly have recognized that in the update you'll see that promote a healthy business climate is clearly a lot more than retail, and you can see that in the action steps that can be taken. I should also mention that the action steps that are considered ongoing in the plan, when you asked what happens to this from this point on, the city staff will continue to do those.
Okay.
It's the items that were listed as new that council would give direction on as they wanted to.
So we'll get a document or some type of pamphlet that we approve.
But this is the approval process. This is the approval process. But I just wanted to mention that when you were asking where does it go from here, the items that are new are the items that you get to choose from, and as well as anything in the world, if you'd like, to be able to direct staff around strategic direction. The ones that are ongoing are the things that we are continuing to do, that we have been given direction, we continue to do. These items on pages 1 and 2 are the link to the original plan, and I don't see any reason why we could, don't have to take those bullet points out. That would be fine, because it does incorporate a lot more than that.
So, thank you.
Second.
Okay, motion's been seconded. Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. I would just leave the bullet points the way they are. It just kind of gives you a link to the original document so that if you're just looking at the update, you don't have to attach the whole original document. And that's the bullet point, the names of the bullet points. I just think it kind of sets the stage for some of this stuff. From what the process, you could decide you're going to start deleting a lot of that. Do we really need to have the update what the process was. But we always look at these reports when we do these strategic planning things and say, we tell people what the process was, because this is now going to become a historical document that we use, the community uses. So I'm not really in favor of starting to, change the wording on certain bullet points that, hark back to the original ones. I mean, if we want to, that's what the community came up with years ago, and the update is, here are the things, and then these are the important parts that the community has reinstated are what we want to focus on, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So I don't really feel there's much need for starting to rearrange it, because I think it's pretty well laid out. Actually, I kind of like the way it's laid out.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coons. I would agree with Councilmember Bagley. I think it would be more meaningful without those hollow bullet points in particular.
All right, I guess we've got a motion that's been seconded. No further discussion. Shall we vote? Okay, it passes 5-2 with Councilmember Levison and Coombs dissenting. All right. We still have to vote on the...
Yes, Mayor Coombs, you still have to vote on the plan as a whole.
On the original plan.
Once you do vote on the entire plan, then we'll be providing you, printed documentation afterwards that has all this information in it, as well as to the community.
So may I have a motion on the original plan? Or on the amended plan now? Let's do it.
Do you not have your...
My machine's not coming back to...
Sorry, that's me.
Councilmember Witt.
I would move 9F.
Second.
All right. Shall we, any further discussion? All right, let's vote. Okay, that passed 7-0. So now it's time for the general business.
Yes, Mayor Coombs, your only item on general business is First and Main Transit and Revitalization Plan discussion, and Phil Greenwald is here to make a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planner with the Economic Development Department. Joined today by Tim Baldwin from Steer Davies Gleave. Brian Schumacher's here from staff as well to help with some of our questions on zoning, and various other staff too to help with some of the ideas of when we talk about floodplain and things like that. Just wanted to let you know I was going to show up in a local bus, but the local buses don't show up this late, so we just a little dig on RTD. Anyway, the whole point of the First and Main plan really is not to talk about this in the context of fast tracks and what's going on with what's been going on. Basically, since we started this process, I think all the plans have changed that we've been talking about, but this plan really goes beyond the idea of does it have to be rail? Does it have to be bus rapid transit? Does it have to be west of Maine? Does it have to be east of Maine? So this plan really will cover the whole idea is flexible, and I think you'll see that in our presentation. I also wanted to thank Councilmember Levison for attending our policy guidance committee, or our policy committee that really set kind of some of the standards on a lot of this. So I wanted to notice that and make sure you all are aware that she did a lot of service on this plan, and you can tell with 157 pages or whatever we're at with this plan, which I'm sure you've all read by now. There's a lot of work put into this. So with that, I just wanted to turn it over to Tim real quick and just go over some of our project goals and go through hopefully what will be a brief presentation from both me and Tim.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having us. I know it's late. We'll move pretty rapidly. You've seen a lot of this before. Our goals were pretty simple, to develop the analysis of the station area, do some community outreach, a market study. You heard from Katie earlier tonight, and a lot of the data that she talked about was very overlap with the data that we were collecting, so we're able to sort of build on each other. And really focus on land use strategies and implementation strategies. We want to make something happen, work with you and the staff and the council to make things happen down in the First and Main area. Our target area, the First and Main intersection, roughly a quarter mile around it, with a little bit of a bleed into some of the other areas, but you'll see some of the key concepts that feed into this. We know what the issues are: the substation, the budget home center that's already there, the mobile home park, some of the things that we have to deal with as we go into it that might affect how we put the plan together. Our aim was to try and look at these issues and try and make them opportunities and see what we can do to work with the community to make things happen. Like I said, we know the floodplain is an issue out there. This map is what the city's prediction would be of the floodplain would look when some of the improvements are made along the river and the bridges. We know that the urban renewal area is a key opportunity for this area. Most of our study areas in the southeast urban renewal area allows us to take advantage. We think of some tax and some TIF financing in the future that can be used to help facilitate development in this area. And a lot of inputs into the process, like we talked about. We talked to the public, we talked to developers. Very helpful to have the developer perspective as we put the plan together. Stakeholders, market analysis, like I mentioned. The focus on Longmont goals that you're talking about tonight work their way into the process too. And then TOD principles, transit-oriented development principles, sort of following on things like compact urban form, walkability. The key issue there is this development, whatever happens down there, has to be successful with or without transit. Transit can make it better, can make it happen sooner in some cases, it can help focus it, but the developer community has to know that it can happen even if transit doesn't happen. My attitude is this is a great area that's just ripe for redevelopment, and I think in working with the community, we put together a plan that meets a lot of the city's goals for the area. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Phil, and he'll walk you through some of the key concepts.
So these concepts that we're going to go over now are basically the critical elements. So when a developer comes into the area after we've hopefully adopted the plan next week, we'll go through some of the next steps. Once there's adoption and once the rezoning has occurred and the comp plan amendments have occurred, there's some critical elements to the plan that we want to go over a little bit as well. As you can tell from the idea of where the rezoning would occur, this is a very general map right now, but we'll get that down to the actual parcel specific, what gets rezoned and what doesn't. You can really see that the transit core area, that's part of a mixed-use zoning. All three of these elements are part of mixed-use zoning: the core, the transit core, the commercial core, and the mixed-use transition areas. And so that transit core basically does allow for a transit station or development on either side of the main street there. So again, that flexibility that's in place with any kind of rezoning. The commercial core, which is really trying to build up that idea of Main Street, that commercial Main Street, along Main Street and on either side of it, trying to mirror some of what's going on in Old Town with setbacks, zero lot line setbacks and things like that. And then mixed-use transition areas to make sure that these areas that are closer to a station area develop in ways that really enhance the idea that people can walk and shorter trips to transit if the station is placed at this location. So how could this area develop over the next 25 years? We'll just go over the very critical elements. Again, this is what, if a developer came in, we would make sure that that there was understanding that these are things that need to be followed. And the idea, obviously, first and foremost is, as far as we know it right now, the regional transit center would be at First and Main. Right now, it's on the southwest corner of that facility, and that's the way we've done the plan to date. No new information from RTD regarding ideas. I know we've sent out some emails and some ideas that there's some other possibilities out there of rail extensions on the North Metro line, but those have not been firmed up at all yet. Those are just ideas that have been put out on the table. The idea that Boston Avenue extend east of Main Street as either a local or a collector street, it doesn't really matter at this point, but it does need to be a connection that does penetrate into the area as far as allowing people to access. The idea that the main streetscape south of 3rd to the St. Vrain River is done. We actually have a federal grant to do that project. I know you've got a letter in your packet that talks about how that's done and make sure that we don't take away access at left turns as is done between 3rd Avenue and 6th Avenue, I think was specifically pointed out. Obviously, what we've done is we've drawn some nice pictures of some landscape, but the turning access will all remain, and if there's loading and unloading that needs to happen, that can be incorporated as well. The idea that Kaufman and Emory become bikeways, and they're enhanced for more bicycle traffic, and those both allow that those connections from the downtown to the St. Vrain River corridor. So I think there's been some discussion about how those look and how those operate as well. As you can see, it's a combination of on-street and then some off-street facilities as well, or some specific to bikeways only on some of that as well. New bridges at Main Street, Pratt Street, and the Burlington Northern. We don't show the Burlington Northern Bridge, but the Main Street and the Pratt Street bridges are things that we control, and we are looking at projects. We do have the Pratt Street Bridge in our CIP for funding. The Main Street Bridge will likely be part of the 3rd to St. Vrain River streetscape improvements, and we're looking for some additional funding through the FEMA process there, similar to what we've done in the left-hand corridor. The idea that some type of grade separation at Kaufman would occur for the railroad, so people could get either over or under the railroad by walking or bicycling without having to have freight rail impede their basically their travel to a transit station in that area. That could be the same thing if the transit station is moved to the east side of Main Street. Emory could take on that same type of character as well. Improvements to river corridor, including floodplain channel and park connections. So the idea that you really, in order to facilitate some of the floodplain issues, take care of the issues along the St. Vrain River as well. And then again, back to the idea of zero lot lines along Main Street for commercial and retail. So there's a number of those for that whole corridor, the idea that zero lot lines would be there. And then break up the transit center parking into smaller and shared components. What we've heard a lot about is we didn't want the sea of parking to kind of take over this area of redevelopment. So the idea is to break the pieces up into slightly smaller components. We do allow, if RTD wants to continue parking further east of the viaduct there for the Pratt Street Parkway. But this hits that element. We also had some other key elements that I won't go over in great detail, but one of them obviously is the redevelopment of Butterball, so that's pretty critical. Also the residential mixed-use components, those are typically south of Boston, and we can go over those if you have other questions on that, but I'm going to skip through that relatively quickly right now. Also included with this was a strategic transit plan, so we really wanted to figure out how the local transit would serve, and that kind of goes back to that joke at the beginning of the presentation. But anyway, what we really did was look at how much service is out there now that RTD is providing to the city of Longmont in the local service, and we came up with they're spending about $2.4 million, and how can we better allocate that money to come up with better local transit for the city. So we came up with two options. We ran this by our transit users group, a very dedicated group of folks that were very vocal about how things should proceed. And they really helped us come up with some ideas of focusing the increased transit on Main Street, so really using that as our spine. The focus on the east-west connector, this one is more of a kind of a diagonal east-west connector, but the idea that we do serve the east side of town and the southwest and get people to locations really in that South Hover corridor. And the idea that we focus on an enhanced column ride. We had a lot of complaints that column ride is working okay, but it could be a lot better. So the idea to enhance that, and one of the ideas was have a checkpoint service, and this really goes to the idea that a column ride vehicle could be at a certain location at certain times, and people could count on it being at the hospital, say at 9 o'clock or every hour on the hour, and you would know it would be there, so you could get a ride. But then once you got on, you could basically go back to your home. You could go back to an address that you tell the operator, and as long as they can make those rides work within that those time frames, they could make it work. If you're on the other side of town, you might have to do a couple extra stops, but that's the basics of the checkpoint service. So the next steps is really that next week we're planning to come forward to you with the resolution that's really the formal adoption then process of this plan. And then really amend the comprehensive plan and the zoning code to formalize this new mixed-use zoning into those pieces. And that's going to be done through PZ Commission, and we'll work with them this summer to talk to them more about the rezoning and the comp plan amendments, and then bring that back to you, obviously, after they've seen it and acted on it as well. That brings up a point that this has been to your PZ Commission. This plan has been to your PZ Commission and your Transportation Advisory Board. So both of those bodies unanimously recommended your approval of this plan. Something to consider next week when we come back. And then RTD is going to consider the transit changes then this summer as well, with public outreach and public hearings specific to Longmont then, with some of the changes that are planned for implementation in January 2013. So that's the schedules we have it right now. Obviously, our staff recommendation is going to be that we would hope that you could move to recommend approval of the First and Main Transit and Revitalization Plan as it's written, without any additions or subtractions at this time. But we understand that you might have some of those, so we'll take questions try to answer your questions.
Councilmember Witt.
Well, first need to say thank you to the voluntary members of this committee that spent so long, and there were so many moving parts, as it were. So the ground shifted many times, and so I believe it's a good plan, and especially kudos to Councilmember Levison. Months and months and months of work and extra effort on her part. So thank you, Councilmember Levison. And I think it's a really good plan. And I would move that we direct staff to bring it back as is.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Begley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. The only question I have is we're redoing a lot of our bridges and whatnot. Is the flood control channel the actual channel at the bottom? Meaning that when you look at 2-31 and you look at the outline, it shows the river. Will that are we just widening the bridges and that becomes the flood control channel?
I'm actually going to ask Nick Wolfram to come up and answer that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council. Nick Wolfram, Engineering Services Manager of the Public Works and Natural Resources Department. As we discussed a little bit at council retreat, we're looking at having to widen the channel to allow not only the bridge, but the bridges, but the channels to keep that water in there and allow the capacity through the community. And following up on council retreat, we're working with Anderson Engineering. Already have a proposal from them to take the conceptual level work that they did with our flood study to a preliminary design work from the BNSF Railroad Bridge through Main Street in that core downtown area, so that we can define a specific needed channel width and channel area down through there that we can work with the community on in this effort as we continue this project.
So it's not going to change. That is the path of the flood control channel.
Along the river, it'll have to be widened out to facilitate, to carry the quantity of flows that come down through there in a major storm event.
And will the width of the channel change the potential plan at all? Meaning, if it's made wider, will that impact the overall plan, or no?
No, not for the rezoning and the comp plan amendments that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, Council, if I can add, one of the things that we're bringing together in this discussion is this is really related to a rezoning component, but as Council directed in the retreat, the work that they're doing with Anderson is also the basis in terms of how we look at the redevelopment of the river and talk about that aspect of the project. And so this was already moving and almost in completion. We're starting to drive that other direction that Council gave us in the retreat, because those two will then start marrying together as we look to the future. And so that's part of it. And then that's where that discussion will actually occur in terms of what will it look like. And that'll be part of the discussion in terms of what do we want to see on the river, and then how do we bring these two plans together.
Councilmember Levinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Councilmember Witt for recognition of this. Actually, Councilmember Blue and I were on the original consultant review committee for the RFP, and then we set it aside. So this is my second turn doing this stuff. So it has been a long haul, and thank you for the acknowledgement. I had a couple of questions. Just first of all, I want to compliment Mr. Baldwin and the team that he put together, because there were some really cool ideas generated, and I think that some of the things that I heard for the first time, somebody from RTD sat in the room, I think it was Chris Quinn, and said, let's see what Longmont comes up with. And they were confident just to let us go and do a bunch of stuff, and I think it was the competency of our consultant and the team he pulled together. And so please pass on my compliments to everybody else on the consulting team that you put in place, because I really think that it was that combination, whatever the secret sauce was, helped a lot. And I also found that the ideas that were generated from the public input were really spot on, responding to what the comments were in the public meetings. And there were quite a variation of comments, and we were able to gather a large diversity of opinions in the community. So a couple of things that I noted, and I just wanted to ask about. On page 225, there was a mention of, let's see, future transit services. Something that I just didn't understand was that there was a mention of a peak hour service between Longmont and the I-25 corridor from downtown to Firestone. That wouldn't be in an RTD capacity, because Firestone's not part of the RTD district.
Correct, Mayor and Council Member. The idea is that would be beyond RTD, because they would not serve outside that district, but that does come from the Boulder County Transit Plan. It does include that component, and they were looking for basically an outside vendor of some type to do that, to operate that.
And then that would serve those areas like beyond County Line Road, like the Walmart Supercenter and Sandstone Ranch and further out.
The vision was that it would start at the I-25 119 park and ride. It's a CDOT, or Colorado Department of Transportation park and ride right now, and that it would work its way in, and the stops were never specifically designated, but that would likely be one.
I was thinking from downtown towards that way. I'm never thinking that we start something at I-25 and hope the end point's Longmont. I always think that Longmont's the center of the universe. That's just my prejudice, you know. Anyway, I also like the way this plan is put together, and certainly having this format where you have the observation and issue implications and then follow-up policies or actions. I think that's very well laid out. One other question I really had is that when we're looking at the land use issue, are we distinguishing this mixed-use zoning from being an overlay district? Is it an overlay district where the initial zoning is still maintained, but mixed use is an option, as it is, as we've seen other places in town? Or are we going to really, piece by piece, change zoning on land?
Mayor and Council Member, the plan right now is to take it as a full zoning, no overlay, just have it be a complete rezoning of the area, straight to mixed use with those designations, those three different categories.
And so if we had a new industrial use at the Butterball plant, how would we reconcile some of those maybe inherent conflicts that we would create?
That's an excellent question, because what the mixed-use overlay district does is it allows some of that industrial use, but obviously not what was going on prior. So part of the idea is that with basically an extension of the LDDA, the Longmont Downtown Development Authority, down through this area, make it look more like what we have in the current downtown. So some of the heavy industrial uses would probably be zoned out of some of that, but it would be allowed to continue currently with the current grandfathering. And maybe Brian has some more to talk about that.
Sure. Sorry, I asked the hard
No,
questions.
that's all right, Mayor, Councilmember Levison. As part of this process, when we originally adopted the mixed-use zoning district, we were looking primarily along Main Street in the downtown area, and to some extent, initially right around First and Main area. But as we broadened out our review of this transit center and looked at some of the surrounding properties, I think we acknowledged that we need to kind of look at the current mixed-use zoning district and the uses that are allowed in there, and maybe tweak those a little bit as we go through this process. So that's certainly something that we'll be looking at as we go through.
And in order for LDDA to look at their boundary lines being expanded, would that have to go to a full vote of property owners? I mean, when I was trying to connect those dots, because it seemed like it was very successful the way the follow-up policies or actions were laid out, and I just didn't see that linkage. So would that be something that would be a legal step we would have to do? Or, I mean, we not meaning we, the city, but that would be something that perhaps the Downtown Development Authority would have to initiate.
I believe so. With part of that process, I don't know, have you had that conversation with Kevin? I know we'd have to have that conversation with the DDA board to get their support in terms of any expansion regarding the DDA boundaries on that, and discuss that obviously with the property owners as well.
And then we would have to work out any of the leveraging of TIF for infrastructure because of exclusions to LDDA TIF that would be different from an urban renewal area that would be focused on this First and Main transit area. That would be part of Southeast Urban Renewal. Okay. All right, fine. Well, thank you. I think that this was a great process, and it would be nice to keep people connected on the team that you put together as we move forward. I think this idea of having the point of time bus service, that was I was very impressed with how creative that was to accommodate aspects of call and ride with a bus arriving point of time. I actually, when that was proposed, I went home and thought, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. It really solves a lot of problems and meets the needs in the community. So kudos.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. Phil, to go along with your joke earlier, the bridge, the BNSF bridge, is that $535 million? Do they want the money up front? Thanks, Phil.
All right. Councilmember Santos? Yes. Yeah, we have a motion to recommend the resolution presented to the City Council to adopt the First and Main Transit and Revitalization Plan on June 12, 2012. And it's been seconded, so shall we vote? Okay, it passes 7-0. All right, now it's time for final call. Public invited to be heard. Is there anyone that'd like to speak to council at this time? Good.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Council members, I am Michael Schatzmeyer, 12001 Twilight Street. I would like to express my great appreciation to the council. The industrial use now existing along the banks of the St. Vrain River was established in the 19th century and this usage was codified in Longmont's land use regulations as industrial zoning in the 20th century. With the council's leadership and vote on the 2012 work plan here tonight, the city begins to move our paradigm for growth and land use planning into the 21st century. Tonight, the city begins a new path towards recognizing the incredible significance, value, and potential of the St. Vrain corridor. It is also finally taking responsibility and a proactive stand against the threat to public safety and the environment that the river poses. Longmont's last great 100-year flood occurred in 1894, and in the 100-plus years, the city has not been forced by devastating events to re-envision their relationship to the river. This has been typical of what occurs with most towns before they take action. Such an event in Fort Collins in 1987 caused over $200 million in damages and killed 5 people. Similarly, Denver, Estes Park, Pueblo, and many other cities took serious action only after suffering consequences of a major flood. Ironically, only after reacting to such events. Today, those cities are reaping tremendous environmental, cultural, social, and economic benefits. This includes creating an environment that has driven the renewal of their downtowns and malls. While the external forces behind fracking and fast tracks are in a large part not within our ability to control internally, our land use regulations with regard to the St. Vrain and the floodplain are within our control. I believe that the River Corridor Initiative is not just a worthwhile concept, but one that is necessary to secure the future of Longmont, environmentally and economically, and the future of downtown and Twin Peaks. As other U.S. cities, states, and countries around the world are swiftly moving to embrace an urban planning paradigm that is essential for competitive 21st century economies, your actions tonight keep the city in that game. Recognizing such global trends for environmental sustainability and smart growth will keep Longmont competitive and flourishing in the new knowledge worker information age. It can lead to Longmont becoming a model community and regional destination that serves as an example to the Front Range, to Colorado, and to the world. Great cities require great leadership. While we cannot always manage the impact of forces outside our boundaries, with regards to the St. Vrain River Corridor, today this city is witnessing the kind of great proactive leadership needed to move the city forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone else would like to come up and speak?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm Joe Bassman, 3414 Lakeview Circle, where I own the surface rights. With pleasure and with pride, I'd like to provide an answer to a question that was posed earlier as to the funding for the survey that was conducted within the city regarding oil and gas. I happen to know the answer to this question because I participated in the survey. I was a visitor for a day when we were canvassing in an area in December. I remember it was quite cold and it was in the evening. And I also know the answer because I explained it to several council members when I delivered the signatures to them. The survey was conducted by Citizens for Sustainable Environment, CFORCE. Regarding who funded it, your constituents funded it. The canvasser would knock on a door, and if the person was willing to speak with them, they were handed a clipboard which had a position statement on it, which said, I don't want fracking and oil and gas wells in my neighborhood and in Longmont. And they were simply asked the question, do you agree with this statement? Most people that I witnessed picked up the clipboard and picked up the pen and signed right there on the spot. Additionally, these people were asked if they would like to contribute to the effort of collecting the signatures. Many of them did, hundreds of them did, I might add. In addition, many of the people were willing to write letters, and all of this was voluntary in the sense it certainly wasn't paid for by a large corporation. It was just a result of knocking on the door. And they contributed in general not only letters and money and their signatures. Many of these people contributed time and their friendship, and we've joined in camaraderie. And many of the people who signed this petition are now working on the effort to bring a charter amendment to the citizens and ask for their participation to sustain the notion that they don't want fracking and oil and gas wells in my neighborhood and in Longmont. And in fact, I encourage all of you as individuals to participate as well, and you'll have an opportunity to sign the petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obviously, we've got one or two more.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, council members. Michael Belmont. I live at 841 Tenacity Drive in Longmont. During a diligent, rigorous, and relentless scientific study on the matter of oil and gas development in Longmont, fracking in particular, curiously, this study led us to Salzburg, Vienna. We hereby wish to present our report, clearly peer-reviewed, for council's consideration. You can join us, Dave. How do you solve a problem like the fracking when in a town it threatens everywhere? How do you treat an industry like fracking, an enemy of the water and the air? Here is the thing you know you'd like to tell them, and here is the thing they ought to understand. But how do we make them stop before they open shop? How do we save our Longmont if we can? Oh, how do we solve a problem like the fracking? Here's how you do it. Simply pass away. FYI, that was not paid for. We were not paid.
Councilmember Santos. Oh, excuse me. Anybody else? Okay, so we're done with the public invited to be heard. So it's now time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Santos.
That was quite the production. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of Colorado has already ruled you can't ban. Just wanted to note that the mayor and I were at Dan Garber's retirement. He retired from the fire department of 37 years. So I just wanted to acknowledge Dan and his service to the city with the fire department. 37 years is quite the time, and I asked him what he was going to do with his time. So he's got some projects. I said, well, are they self-imposed or spouse-imposed? Is it self-imposed first, and the spouse-imposed chores will come later? I'd also like to invite residents on Saturday at 10 o'clock at the east end of Roosevelt Park. The Disabled American Veterans are cordially invites everyone to attend the new military service flags display at the Veterans Memorial Gardens at Roosevelt Park. So hopefully we'll have some really nice weather, not too hot, not too cool, but at 10 o'clock Saturday at the east end of Roosevelt Park by the big flag. So hope to see people out there.
Councilmember Samori.
Well, keeping in tradition, we have a birthday to celebrate that we missed a couple of weeks ago. And it's somebody here in the room that probably doesn't want me to say her name, Sandy Cedar. So let's wish her a happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
You don't want to sing? Oh, come on, we got to sing.
We can't compete with,
Yeah, but we can bring him down here.
You. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sandy. Happy birthday to you. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. First of all, I would like to thank Amgen for providing us with a lovely tour last Friday. I really enjoyed seeing their facility, as did several other council members and city staff. I also would like to, in keeping with my tradition, mention a local business. My business this week is Ace Hardware at 17th and Main Street. One of the things I like about Ace Hardware is their motto. Our business is customer service, and they actually deliver on their motto. The other thing I really like about Ace Hardware is their housewares department. They have gadgets that you didn't even know you needed, but that you need very much and you should buy. So I would encourage everyone to go to Ace Hardware this next week.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to encourage everybody to go to the meeting tomorrow on the mall, and at the mall, and listen to the ideas that Newmark Barrow and Allen Ginsberg are going to be presenting for the community to see and understand and comment on, and one other thing. Oh, I was looking at the calendar and realizing that I may have a conflict with a coffee with council on June 30th. I have a couple of, I actually have a wedding to go to that day, and did not realize that I was assigned. So I am wondering if someone would accommodate switching with me. I see Councilmember Witt acknowledging. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to the rest of the week's activities.
Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Actually, we had traded the coffee with council when you and the mayor substituted for us, but I have, Well, it's going to be Katie and somebody because I have a conflict on the 30th too. So it might be Katie and Gabe Samori.
That's Saturday in the book. We'll figure that out afterwards.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Wow, what a... I went down and saw the alley, and I was just really impressed. I'm just so excited with the work that they did, and it's going to be great for downtown, and it's just neat. I just really love the work that Kimberly's been doing down there, and I just hope they go a little bit faster on our block and people figure out where to park. Anyway, seeing no other people in the queue, City Manager, do you have any comments?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City Attorney, any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.